listening to the
Hey, MFM. See you on the lift.
Back attack, dude.
Bon voyage!
Hey, yo, homies, good.
Slide down them big hills, you know what I mean, on the big, nice burgundy snowboard.
All right, we are excited for today's show. We're here at the Bomb Hole, which is presented by Pub Beer. And of course, Run Through a Wall Smelling Salts. Now today in studio, hosting with me today, we got Mary Walsh. Mary, how are you feeling today? How you doing?
I feel excellent. I'm doing great. Woke up to this nice fall weather in Salt Lake, and we're here for a really big day. I'm stoked.
Well, we're so happy that you could join us. And of course, we got the infamous Silk D, the producer, running the boards. Silk, how you feeling today?
Best day of my life.
Wow.
Every day.
Sounds like it with that monotone. Love it. And
I'm having a great time.
The guest of the hour, we got Donna Carpenter in studio. Donna, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm psyched to be here.
We're so happy that you could join us. And we have a brief description for our listeners that don't know who you are, that are living under a rock. They already probably do, but I'll read it anyway. Donna is the owner and chair of Burton Snowboards. There are few people on this planet that have had such a profound impact on snowboarding from its inception to its current state. Donna has been there every step of the way. Of course, her impact starts with the sport itself, but her commitment to bettering snowboarding by bringing things that were once on the outer edges into snowboarding's core continues to cement her legacy, notably her advocacy and policy for women in the workspace, pregnancy policies, sustainability efforts, equity, and inclusion work, and much, much more. Today, Donna's main focus is protecting her husband, Jake Burton's legacy by advocating for the sport of snowboarding with her 3 sons. Donna also continues to be a strong climate activist, speaking on behalf of sustainability efforts, as well as advocating for more diversity on the mountain. Donna is a truly special leader, a die-hard snowboarder that is hugely responsible for where snowboarding is today and where it's heading. So we're going to get into all things Donna Carpenter. We are excited.
Wow, what an intro.
Just a little scratch of the surface.
Yeah, it's just the scratch of the surface. But, I always thought for some reason you're from the East Coast, but doing the research, I was surprised from where you're from. Why don't you tell us where you're from originally?
Nacogdoches, Texas. How's that? Yeah, a lot of people think I'm from Boston or whatever, but no, I'm from Nacogdoches, Texas, and all my relatives are still there. And when I was 4 years old, my father got a job in New York City, and it took my mother 4 years to actually make the move because she was not going to raise Yankee children. And one of the first memories I have as a kid is asking my grandmother if she was going to come visit us. And she said, no, because that's where Satan lives. And I was like, my parents are moving me to where Satan lives.
Amazing. That's awesome. So, yeah, basically, what did it look like for you before snowboarding, and how did you find snowboarding?
Yeah, I think my family moved to New York. We actually moved to a suburb of New York, and I never felt at home there. I never felt like my values matched the wealthy suburbs of New York. I was quite a rebel, and I never felt like I belonged in Texas. And it really wasn't until I moved to Vermont, until I met Jake and found this tribe of like-minded people, a sense of place, a sense of home, and a sense of family with Jake.
Incredible. And at what point did you guys discover this snowboarding thing before it was even really a thing?
Yeah, well, when I met Jake, so I met him in a bar on New Year's Eve. I saw him coming out of the men's room. He had these really cute crooked teeth. I don't know, I had a thing for that. And, you know what he was drinking too? Jack Daniels and milk.
Wow.
Oh,
what? And he had a wad of weed in his lip because he had a pre-ulcerous condition. He was working like 12 hours a day by himself. So the milk coated his stomach or whatever. And I was in New York City. I was going to college in New York City at the time. And I'm like, your name is Jake and you drink Jack and milk and you make what?
Oh my God.
So yeah, he was really pretty much alone in his barn in the back of the house making these wood planks with ropes on the end and kind of straps for your feet.
Amazing. And you rolled up your sleeves and you just got right in there right from the get-go,
Yeah, well,
right?
I remember the first date we had, he was like falling asleep because he had been working so much. And I was like, oh, this is great. But I said, so let's go do it. Let's go do this thing, you know? And so we went out, we drove up to the top of Stratton, and he showed me this thing. I remember I went flying or whatever. You wore high-top sneakers, you know. But I remember the board went flying off my feet, and he came running back up the hill, and he said, okay, put my board exactly where yours was and let go. And it landed within 2 feet. I thought, oh, wow, that's cool.
Incredible. Incredible. So at the time, this isn't a time when snowboarding was allowed at the ski resorts.
No, and you know what? He didn't even conceive of it as being on a ski resort. The whole idea that it was an alternative. You know, it was, you're too young to remember, but it's during the oil crisis. Gas was really expensive. You could only fuel up every other day or whatever. Gas was expensive. Ski areas were getting more expensive. So he really conceived of it as an alternative to going to a ski resort, that you would do it on the back hills, you would do it on golf courses, and it never really entered his mind until we had some young guys working for us, Andy Coughlin, Mark Heingartner, and they were the ones who, they used to say, we don't like to hike as much as Jake likes to hike. You know, they kind of grew up skiing. So they were the ones to really kind of first take it at Bromley. We used to go to Bromley at night and say, you know, that's, yeah, shout out to Bromley. Except they didn't allow us. We did. We had
Okay.
to.
I take your airborne back.
Airborne back.
That's
no.
not
Cut
an
it
airborne.
out.
So-
You want to hear it.
So we'd go at night, and what I would do is I would make cookies and brownies and thermoses of hot chocolate, and I'd give it to the cat drivers, and they would drive us all night long. But those kids working for us really were the first ones to say, hey, you know, this could be done at a ski resort.
So I kind of want to interject and take it back a tiny bit because I'm still blown away by the whiskey milk thing. Wait, what? But so, you know, I think it's obvious you and Jake had such an incredible connection and such an incredible love. But at that moment when you're living in New York City, you go there, you see this guy, like you said, crooked teeth, drinking milk, has this kind of like off the normal path idea. What was that moment? Were you like, I'm drawn to this immediately? Or were you kind of like, I like this guy, he's a little doing his own thing? But like, what was that early connection for you?
Fun fling.
Yeah. Was it, it's kind of turned into this thing,
And
many
you
years
know,
later, but
it's funny when I told my mother I was marrying him, whatever, a year later, she said, that bear, I don't even think he combs his hair. And that is one thing not a lot of people know about Jake. Never combed his hair, not once. And she was like, I thought you were going to find some nice New York doctor, lawyer, this guy.
that's
But I think
awesome.
I was really attracted to the lifestyle, too. And the fact that he had a dream. Mm-hmm. And he was working his ass off to pursue this dream that everybody thought was crazy.
Yeah, that's the thing I think about too. Is like I heard stories of you guys selling boards out the trunk of the car, and what was the immediate reaction when you have this new thing that nobody's ever heard of or seen, and you're out trying to peddle these snowboards? How was that received in the early days?
Yeah, I mean, some people got it. A lot of people don't. Jake used to, I remember when he went out on a road trip with, I can't remember, 50 snowboards and came back with 55.
Oh, God. People are unloading them back on
They're
him?
like, we don't want this shit.
Yeah.
Take it back.
Damn.
So it was hard. But then there was a group of people who started to kind of get it. Mm-hmm. But we would sell to anybody. In the beginning, I remember Jake and I, we had some dealer in New Hampshire, and we're like, well, we should go see that dealer. This is really early on. And we're like, oh, fuck, it's a gas station.
Convenience.
But the guy was into it.
Incredible. So what point did things start actually getting momentum?
Yeah, I mean, I think, around the mid-'80s was when Jake said, hey, I wonder if we can make this thing like a ski. I wonder if we could steal skiing's technology, steel edges, fiberglass, bases, bindings. And we went to Europe because at the time that's where all ski production was in Europe, was in the Alps. And we couldn't afford to go over there, but my parents invited us over for a vacation around Christmas. And Jake had, I think, 5 or 6 factories he was going to talk to, and some of the big ones like Atomic or whatever. And he made appointments, and he had the plans, and he went like, hey, could you make this? And they all went, yes, yeah. A press to make a snowboard didn't exist. They were, really narrow to press skis. And so anybody was going to have to really totally retool to make a snowboard. And at midnight, in a snowstorm, he finally got to the last factory outside of Salzburg, Austria. They had to wake up the daughter to translate. It was Kyle Ski was the name of the company, and they made skis for other company. Like they made Trex cross-country skis and some of the other Austrian companies. So, and he never spoke a word of English, and still doesn't to this day. And they woke up the daughter, midnight snowstorm, and here Kyle said, hey, I think I can make this.
Wow. So what an exciting time. So where did it go from there?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, I was not going to get involved in the business, but, I had married him, moved from New York City to southern Vermont, and I was like, oh, fuck, what the hell am I doing here? What am I going to do here? And he said, let's move to Europe for a while because I really want to focus on this production. I was like, hell yeah. We had both spent time in Europe. We'd both done kind of gap years in Paris and loved Europe. So I said, hell yeah. And I had actually gotten a job with a nonprofit, the Experiment in International Living, and I was going to be recruiting Austrian students to come to the U.S. and vice versa. And before we left, he said, we're getting these inquiries from people in Europe who want this. Can you take a look? And the next thing I knew, I had declined the job. I was 22 years old. I said, I was setting up an office in Innsbruck, Austria, and Jake's like, you can run sales and operations while I work on production.
Wow. And is that what you originally, when you were studying in school, had kind of planned to go into like the nonprofit or area?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had studied political science, and I think my goal really was sort of some kind of humanitarian work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So one thing to back up too, I think it's interesting to talk about, you just kind of breezed over, but the huge shift in your life moving from New York up to Vermont. Like there's
and it was southern Vermont.
Yeah, southern,
too.
yeah.
I mean, our employees used to call Manchester, Vermont zippy because there was zip to do.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of love that.
Yeah, how would you adjust to that lifestyle though? Would you like it or were you
I moved to Europe.
Yeah, perfect. There it is. Amazing. So then you start working. You're working for Burton. You're doing production, and then how did your role evolve over there?
Yeah, so basically my job was to find distributors in each of the countries. To go to somebody who had experience, preferably with hard goods or something like that, or clothing, and set up the distribution in each country.
And was it working early or was it a struggle early?
It was a little bit of a struggle, but I also remember it was a time where it was really taking off in the 80s here. And I remember looking for a French distributor. We had lost our original French distributor. And I remember meeting this guy who had a bunch of different brands that he sold. And we met at the trade show at ISPO, and I said, look, I'd really like you to distribute the product. He's like, I don't know, maybe if you send me a few boards, I'll see what happens. literally a week later, he called me and he said, I will take whatever boards you have in stock. He said he had sold hundreds of snowboards over the phone to his dealers. It was just at that time that people were really starting to get it, and it was really starting to take off. So the growth was phenomenal.
Wow. And that first boom, did you guys start with like a team? How did that work for marketing purposes?
Yeah, I mean, we pretty much had an office set up in the U.S. We were growing, and then we set up a team in Europe.
And then what about, sorry, I was referring to like a team of riders. Like who were you supporting? Or
Oh, yeah. Really from the beginning, we had riders, in the early days. We had, Betsy Shaw and, some of the Hayes brothers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's OG Vermont.
OG Vermont.
Yep.
Yeah, so one of the first things we did was look for athletes in Europe.
Cool. And then who helped bolster the brand from the athlete standpoint in the early days?
Yeah, well, I was European team manager
Oh, wow.
among other jobs.
Cool. Amazing. So you're getting sponsor me tapes left and right. That's probably a free sponsor me tape. But
Yeah.
Amazing.
And at the same time, you're navigating the first years of marriage and and the first years of adulthood. Like, I mean, to go from college right into, working on building a sport, that's kind of also just a huge jump.
But you know what? Jake was always fun. It was a real adventure. Like, we brought our dog. We traveled everywhere together. It was also a lot of fun. It was a lot of stress. I used to have what I called mini breaks. A little breakdown for a day, step out.
Stress relief. It's getting the stress out.
Well, I might be jumping around chronologically, but I just want to get into a guest question. This is from Olivia Kelly. Here we go.
Hi, Donna. It's Olivia. I have a two-part question. The first one is, I love watching you snowboard. You always seem like you're flying down the mountain, having the most fun. I want to know what you're usually listening to. The second question is, or I guess, could you tell me about your trip around the world with Jake and the boys?
Yeah, I do love snowboarding. I mean, that's the stress relief, right? It's interesting. When we were working in Europe for a couple of years, we realized we were working night and day, and we weren't taking time to go snowboarding. And that's when Jake made the commitment to snowboard 100 days a year, because he said, I'm not going to lose touch with this sport. So we really had to make like almost an effort. But it is the best stress release out there. And I do rock music, and I'm usually listening to Tom Petty. Maybe The Boss.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Good choices.
And then Olivia, who's like a daughter to me. I love that girl. She asked about the round the world trip. So I guess it was 2002, we started talking about taking our kids. Vermont's a great place to raise kids, but it's a little la-la land, right? You never lock your door. You're kind of, everything's great. It's beautiful. And we really wanted our kids to see another part of the world. So we started talking about, hey, do we move to New Zealand for a year? Do we move to Europe for a year? And then we said, fuck, we want them to see the world. So they were 14, 10, and 7. And then I have a niece who we raised almost like a daughter. She was 15. She came with us. And we followed the winter for a year. And it was the best thing we ever did. I mean, I remember thinking, oh, this is going to be good for our family. This is going to be great. But every day, like, talk about living in the moment. Like, how when you're traveling and seeing a new place, you are so engrossed in the moment because it's new and you're learning about it. Every day was like that. It was just incredible.
Wow.
And we snowboarded in 5 continents.
Wow. I remember, I think it was like announced that was happening, by marketing. And I remember just being like, wow, that is literally the absolute dream. That's the dream of snowboarding right there.
Yeah. And Craig had recently passed, or he had passed a few years before that. And so we went to his partner, Savina. Olivia was 3, I think. And so we went to Savina and we said, hey, we would love for you to join us on any part of the trip that you'd like. And Savina said Craig always loved Japan. And so Olivia was 3, and she and Savina joined us in Japan for a month.
Wow.
So
That's
special.
incredible.
And, just to add, Olivia is so thankful. And, when I was talking to her about you, she was just lighting up about how you and Jake took her in as your own family.
Yeah, totally. She always felt like a daughter.
Yeah, so special. And you just mentioned you've done that for your niece. It seems like it's almost innate in you to just make friends and people that are close to you feel like family.
Yeah. Like I said, I created my own family with Jake and with snowboarding. And that's what's amazing. I mean, I have a couple young women who are, like Olivia, like my niece Victoria, who are like daughters. And I think my sons would say they're like sisters. I'm kind of maternal that way.
That's so special. Well, running back to the early days, I was always curious to talk about, I was with Craig being such a big part of Burton. I would love to hear your perspective on how he helped kind of skyrocket the brand in some ways.
I think he changed our whole DNA. I mean, I really do. I think that, up until the point Craig joined us, it was really Jake was there designing the boards, designing outerwear. Nobody was making outerwear for us to wear, so we had to design it. And he really saw that as his role. And Craig really changed that. I mean, I'll never forget Craig saying, look, I want to ride for you, and I'll ride for you, but you got to listen to me. You got to really listen to me. And for an entrepreneur who's used to doing everything and making every decision, that's not that easy. But we really made that commitment to Craig. We will listen to you. We'll listen to you about the product, where you think the sport is going, how we can make the sport a better sport. So it really changed our whole philosophy.
And I always remember thinking back on the kind of super interesting how there was like the secret, was it the air? The
Mystery air.
The mystery air, yes. Yep.
Well, that was because of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we had that big rivalry between us and Sims, and I don't like to speak ill of the dead, but he was a shithead. I mean, he was unethical. He was an asshole. And Craig was riding for him. He didn't like the kind of treatment he was getting on the team. So he approached me, actually, at a U.S. Open and said, would you guys be open? And I'm trying to act all cool, like, yeah, maybe we'd be open. Like, are you kidding me? Oh, my God, yes. So then Sims and Vision, who owned Sims at the time, sued us. They said, we approached him, which wasn't true. And they had really screwed him with his contract. I mean, he was forced to sign a contract under duress. He was sitting in the airport with a ticket to the U.S. Open. And Tom said, unless you sign this contract, you're not going. And it was a personal service contract to Tom. So meaning Tom could sell the brand to anybody, and Craig would still be forever tied to Tom. God. So it really, the contract was bullshit. Our lawyers took a look at it and said, that's bullshit, right? The problem was we got in front of a judge who was like, you are all degenerates.
Oh, my God.
And I don't know if anybody's ever told this story, but in the middle of the trial, Craig's nose started bleeding. And it was like the peak of the cocaine, And Jake's like, oh, fuck, they're going to think he's a cokehead. And literally, this judge was like, you're all, trouble. And actually ruled against us, which we couldn't believe. But we still knew it was a bullshit contract, and the appeals court took about an hour to reverse it. In the meantime, you've got to make marketing material. You've got to make product and you've got to make marketing materials way ahead of the time you're going to sell it. And so I remember when I was like, what are we going to do with this board that Craig has designed? And we're so excited about it. He was riding it with a black top for 2 years, I think you'll remember, because the judge basically said, you can't endorse. You can ride whatever you want, but you can't endorse a brand. You can't endorse Burton. So Jake had the idea of let's put it in a box. And he was pretty convinced that the appeals would go our way and we could unveil it.
Special times. Wow.
So, it's funny, like sometimes you make these marketing decisions because, oh, fuck, we're in a lawsuit. And then people think, oh, that was the most brilliant marketing move you've ever made. You're like, okay, yeah.
Yes. Those kind of circumstances can breed very amazing ideas.
Exactly.
Was it invention by necessity, kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it seems like that's also, for me, I'll be totally transparent. Like I'm not in the Burton circles, so to speak. We're here in Salt Lake. I don't know the inner workings of Burton, so to speak, from where you guys are now. But upon doing my research, talking to Mark Mick and Kelly Clark and Olivia and all these people that have been a part of the fabric of the brand for so long, the thing that just keeps coming back is like the emphasis on team. And you guys have always done rider roundtables and brought people in that are riders and made them feel like family. That kind of seems like, from what I'm hearing, it's like part of your maternal instincts in some ways, right?
Yeah. Also, it was Craig's influence.
Yeah.
I remember our first rider roundtable.
Yeah.
It was in Europe. It was the year we signed Craig. And we got all the riders from all over the world to come and look at product and tell us what they think. Our whole mind shifted to say, hey, we should be listening to the people that are on this equipment 100 days a year, not behind a desk or a CAD machine, Mm-hmm. So that really became, like I said, part of our DNA, listening to the riders. And where do they think the sport's going? What innovation do they want to see? And then they do become close friends. And, you got to listen when it's hard, too, I mean, I remember the day Craig came to us and said, he was at the top, the very top, and he's of competitive snowboarding. And he's like, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to film in the backcountry. And you're like, about what? You want to what? And that was before people could, I credit Craig with people being able to make a living filming. And he saw that and he said, yeah, I'm losing my passion being a competitive snowboarder. I want to go out and film. That was hard for us to hear, I remember a few years ago at a women's rider roundtable, I had Kelly Clark and Kimmy Fasani come to me, and our creative guy had started to use some models for our kind of off-the-mountain photo shoots, like if you're wearing Burton fleece or whatever, rock climbing, skateboarding, or whatever. We were using some models. They were athletic, but they were models. And Kimmy and Kelly came to me during a roundtable, sat me down, and said, this isn't cool. You should be using us. We do cool things on the off season. You should be, and it was like, I was like, oh shit, they're right. And the fact that they can tell us the hard things, I think, is really special.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and sorry,
No, go ahead.
That was such a big thing in our industry, because I feel that, with the influence that Burton has, you guys are the tip of the spear in terms of if you're doing X, Y, or Z, then it kind of makes it okay
when we
or
fuck,
not okay.
When we fuck up.
But that's not a message, like to be able to say, we're not going to do this. We're going to listen to these women who want this. That was huge. I know that made ripple effects throughout the community of women in snowboarding to be like, okay, this is a huge win.
And I think it was because I had gained the trust of Kimmy and Kelly. They knew they could come to me and tell me something I didn't want to hear, as well as what I do want to hear, So I think that the roundtable is more than just a gathering of riders every year. It's really to hear the good, the bad, the ugly.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, the saying too, you know, like as Burton goes, the industry goes, have been said, but just thinking about that in regards to what you said with Craig as well, is that you very well could have been like, this is forward thinking. I don't like this. I don't know if there's return on investment on this, right?
We did say that.
Yeah.
But we said we promised to listen.
Yeah, exactly. But then, so then you guys invested in Craig and continued to follow his dream and support him.
And
in
he
that.
was right.
And he was right. But who else? Then the industry follows, right? If you had been like, nope, well, we're gonna cut him loose and we're gonna focus on contests, like that might have also been the, you know, rinse and repeat for all the brands as well, you know. So just kind of wanted to highlight that as being like an industry leader in that space, and I'm sure there's other brands doing it too. I don't know or not, but I think that that respect for that. That's awesome.
I have a question relating to that too, because over, you know, many decades, that has remained at the root of the core identity and philosophy of the brand. But you also, I mean, there's so much up and down that goes over in the industry, obviously. And how do you keep that at the center while also being able to take risks and make mistakes and make, you know, amazing things happen? How do you, as the company's grown, sorry, this is kind of a big,
Great question.
I'm jumping ahead.
That's a great question.
You know, as the company's grown, how do you really keep that in the foundation and keep nurturing that while expanding the purview?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always measured our success 3 ways, right? And we've always measured it by the strength of the brand and, you know, not doing stupid shit with the brand. I mean, and Jake really always played that role, right? Of brand, you know, I want this is my name, right? So protecting the brand. Profitability, you got to have profitability to keep going. And we've always funded our growth through our own profitability. We've never borrowed long-term. We've never brought in investors. So I think that's been a key to our success, that we've been, you know, Jake and I were making the decisions, right? And we can decide one year, hey, you know, we're down economically, but we want to continue to support our athletes, so we're going to take less of a profit this year. You know, we can easily make that. We don't have any shareholders. And then the third part has always been culture and community and how important that is. And I've always seen that kind of as my role. So I think it's how you measure success.
Mm-hmm. So that's going back to measuring success. This is super interesting. I'm really excited to talk about this because if you really look at it on a fundamental level, you have achieved massive success, right? Like from creating this awesome brand that is beloved and doing what you love with it and being able to travel the world and do, you know, heli trips with pro snowboarders and all these, you know, live this great life, right? And also like what we're kind of taught is that success is really tied to financial, you know, earnings in a lot of senses, like kind of societally, I'll say, right? And so, you know, in your terms of success, like you've had it all, and you've lived it all. Like, what does that mean for you personally?
Well, you know, a couple stories to tell you. I mean, I think when Jake first started, before I even met him, he thought, you know, he had a snurfer and he kept saying, why aren't they doing more with this product? Like, he could see it as a sport, right? So he's young, he's working for an investment firm in New York, and he's like, I'm going to get rich quick on this idea. Not really. And he always says, as soon as he let go of that and just focused on, I see a sport here, I'm going to focus on this sport, and I'm going to focus on the riders, everything else follows. So that's really one of our big mottos, right? Focus on the rider. Don't worry about the profitability. It will follow if you're doing the right things. And then, you know, you talked about family, right? And having a culture of a real family culture. Well, I always say when people ask me, how did you do that? I say you put them through fucking hell and you get through the other side and you're a family. It's going through the hard times. So after I came back from Europe, actually it was Jake who always pushed me into my next role. I was like, what am I going to do? You know, we came back from Europe really to raise kids. And he's like, we need a chief financial officer. And I was like, I can't be that. I can't do that. And he's like, yes, you can. You just ran Europe. So anyway, I became chief financial officer. We were growing. We were profitable. I negotiated an incredible deal with the banks. Now, we don't have any long-term debt, but we have a lot of short-term borrowing needs, and it's very seasonal, right? So we have to borrow all this money to make the product, and then we don't get paid until January or whatever. So I had this incredible bank deal, really cocky, and it was the savings and loan crisis in 1989. And our bank, so what I had to do for this bank loan was I had to show a profit, which we did, and I had to not borrow for 30 days. So meaning, you know, we make the stuff, we pay back down the loan. I kept us clean for 45 days, you know, 50% longer than the bank had asked. And I pick up the phone and I said, okay, I need money for payroll. And they said, oh, we're a $20 billion bank. We want to be a $12 billion bank. We're getting rid of all risky loans. You're one of them. Sorry. I had to walk. I was pregnant with my first son. I was like 6 months pregnant with my first son. I had to walk around to about 50 people in the warehouse, production, accounts payable, you know, all about 50 people and say, you know, that paycheck you got, it's not worth the paper it's printed on. You can't cash it. And to a person, nobody left, nobody complained. They all said, look, we understand this is out of your control, and we trust you. And it took me about 2.5 weeks to get emergency funding and then to finally get another bank deal. But I tell you, that was the moment where I thought, you know, if this happens, Jake and I will be fine. But I've got people in accounting who are single mothers with kids in daycare. I'm responsible. We're responsible for these people's livelihoods. And I think that, you know, that's when I realized we were a family. They stuck through us. Nobody left. Nobody complained. They said, we trust you. And that's when I realized, wow, this isn't about us. This is about the people who work here and who are supporting us day in and day out and who trust us. And I think that's the moment I realized we were a family.
Wow.
Damn, that is so powerful to hear. That's such an interesting and refreshing perspective in a world where it seems as though sometimes it's like margins over people, you know, and then look at what's came of it. What a powerful lesson to hear. Just kind of really, really cool also for a person like, you know, trying to run a brand myself too. I'm just like, I'm literally like a sponge. Like, this is so cool. And everybody that I talk to, they always bring up, you know, you guys do this fall bash, like, and everybody talks about the fall bash. I'd love to hear you talk about the fall bash and what that's all about.
Yeah, really, it started almost 40 years ago. Yeah. And when we were still in southern Vermont, and, you know, we love Vermont, and, you know, we have such a sense of place in Vermont, and we really wanted to, and fall is really special in Vermont, and we really wanted to bring our friends, family, and employees together for like a Saturday afternoon of touch football and then some food and a little music. And so the first year was about 40 people.
Wow.
Last year was about 1,400.
Oh my gosh.
And it's still in our home.
Yeah.
And it's still, the afternoon is set up for kids. You know, we have face painting and pony rides and, you know, bouncy castle for the kids. And then we clear out our living room and we bring in about 12 babysitters so everybody can just dump their kids in the living room. And we still have a pig roast. We have local farmers who bring, you know, now it's up to about 8 pigs or something. And yeah, it's stayed the same, just kind of grown, and always in our home, and it's really special.
I had to jump in because obviously I'm from Maine. I spent lived in Vermont for right after college in Burlington, and obviously the culture of snowboarding is so enriched and defined and created by Burton in New England and specifically. And every year the Fall Bash is like the thing. Like, I mean, I'm getting excited just thinking about it because it's like, I remember going there out of college as, you know, a +1 and being like, oh my God, there's a chocolate fountain here.
Yeah,
Oh my
chocolate
God.
fountain. That's a tradition.
I hear about the zip line.
Oh,
That-
the zip line is that into the pond? I haven't used that.
Yeah, we
myself.
have a zip line over our pond. And
It's-
the athletes will show off on that. It's pretty crazy.
Well, that's what's crazy too. Like when I had this very, not to make this about my memory, but like I had this very specific memory and like scars on my hand to show it that playing dodgeball against UC Oksanen in the indoor mini soccer field and freaking out, being like 22 years old and being like, I watch him in movies and now he's trying to peg me with a dodgeball. And I feel like the Fall Bash like was such a special moment where you brought the community together, whether it's a Burton employee and the team or like a friend or a family member. I mean, there's something really special about that. And I even now still get excited when the invite hits my mailbox. I'm like, oh my God, the Fall Bash is coming. And I just think it's like this, it's a big thing, not only on the East Coast, but just in snowboarding. But I really do feel like that exemplifies the culture of snowboarding as a whole.
Yeah,
It's just a
I agree.
special day.
Yeah, all ages. Everybody just having a good time.
Yeah.
It could be raining. It could be snowing. It could be a nice day, but it's always really special.
Yeah.
Now this is
I think the riders love it too.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the riders love just to be there and the employees, like you said, like, oh my God, I'm interacting with Mark McMorris, you know, or Kelly Clark. Oh my God. So it's a great way to get the community together.
And also, it's really cool that you guys, you know, open up your arms to people to come in, and instead of, you know, it's a lot of times a big CEO might isolate or, you know, kind of build a castle and it becomes a prison in some ways. But, you know, you guys open up the...
Jake built a fun house
Exactly.
with a zip line over the pond
Now,
and a soccer field in the basement.
It's amazing.
so this might be, you may have already answered this, but just, you know, I think you could maybe have some good insight into, you know, if you're a brand and you're trying to build a good company culture, like what are the ingredients?
Yeah, put them through hell, right? No, I think it was, I want to say like 15 years ago, I kind of had one of those moments where I was like, you know, we think people come to work for us because of the culture, but are we doing enough to really nurture that? You know, we just sort of kind of assumed, oh, you know, we've got this great culture, but are we proactively nurturing that culture? And one of the big things I heard from employees was, we want to know where you're going. What's your vision? You know, where do you want to be and how do I fit into that? And I remember going to Jake, because it's in our heads, right? And we think it trickles down, but kind of the bigger you get, the more you really need to, bring people on board with that. So I remember going to Jake and saying, you know, this is the feedback I'm getting. And he's like, well, we're anti-corporate, so we can't have a mission statement. There's our mission statement. So I ended up calling it The Stance, right?
Nice name.
Yeah. And he was okay with that. But really, I mean, there were 3 parts to it. You know, the first part is what I said, focus on the rider and everything else will follow. You know, the second part was defining our values, and it's we work like we ride, right? We've got to have passion, but we've got to be agile, we've got to be humble. And then the third part is we ride together. So, you know, from that, really saying, you know, this is who we are, this is where we want to go, and this is how you fit in. This is how we're going to help develop you as an employee, be more proactive about that. I think that's really important.
Damn, that is deeply inspiring for me. That's really special to hear.
And, you know, the other thing, there was a moment even earlier, I think, where Jake and I faced the question, I would say 20 years ago, do we want to stay a niche snowboard brand, or do we want to try and continue to grow? And I think you're either growing or dying, right? I think a company is like an organism. A brand is like an organism. You're either growing or you're dying. And one of the main reasons we wanted to keep growing was because we wanted to work with the best people. We wanted to recruit the best talent. I love working with the people I work with. They are so smart, so motivated, so incredible. So we made a decision to continue to grow. Did we always make the right decisions? No, right? I'm thinking about skateboarding and surfing and, the other snowboard brands. That wasn't a way we should have tried to grow. But I think that you also have to be growing to attract the best people.
Mm-hmm. All right, it is time for some house cleaning for some general bomb hole announcements. We have a few events coming up this year. The first one being January 6th at Woodward. We have a ride day and rail jam, fun grassroots event. Just ride with all the homies, community vibes, and then we'll have a rail jam at the end of the day for some money. All ability levels welcome. And then we have our annual event, the Bomb Hole Cup, April 6th and 7th at Brighton. Day 1's a bank slalom, and day 2 is a park showdown. Really fun. It's our 3rd year doing it, and it's been a blast. This year, we're going to have a beginner class. So if it's your first year snowboarding, come do your first race. And of course, all the way up from all age groups up into pro class. So be sure to check out Bomb Hole Cup, April 6th and 7th at Brighton. It's always a blast. We're going to have music this year, which will be really cool. Another thing we got going on is our website. Be sure to bookmark bombhole.com. We're always uploading new content on there, trying to make it a destination site. And the most important news, we officially are launching the Brick. It's our 3-pack of run-through-a-wall smelling salts, premium packaging. It's particularly for those who do not need doors. As you can see here, it says say no to doors. But yeah, save yourself some money. Get yourself the 3-pack of smelling salts. It comes with 2 free stickers as well and some bomb hole stickers. And get yourself a 3-pack of run-through-wall smelling salts. Great holiday gift for a friend, and be running through sheetrock in no time. All right, we're going to take a quick break and talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, Bubs Naturals. Now, Bubs Naturals supports snowboarding. So if you're going to buy an electrolyte mix, might as well buy it from a company that supports snowboarding. They have 2,000 milligrams of electrolytes in each one of these little packets. They're vegan, no added sugar. That's really important. No added sugar. Most of these other ones are packed full of sugar. Soy-free, non-GMO, gluten-free. It's no artificial colors, flavors, or preservatives. Their Hydrate or Die hydration packs are amazing. It's a product I actually use every single day, and I'm not bullshitting. So if you're interested in getting some hydration packs, I recommend the lemon flavor. That's my favorite. They're also known for their collagen. That's kind of their staple product. Jeremy Jones mentions how he always uses it to come back from injuries. Good for your skin, good for your nails. So if you're interested in getting some electrolyte mix, some collagen, check out bubsnaturals.com and use promo code BOMBHOLE at checkout for 20% off. Again, bubsnaturals.com, promo code BOMBHOLE, 20% off.
And there's an element that if you don't try, you need to quote unquote fail in order to keep growing and keep progressing and and find that balance.
Failure is fundamental. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that any good entrepreneur knows that you have to fail. Mm-hmm. It's inevitable.
Yeah. I read this book, Creativity Inc. from the people from Pixar, and it was really, their mantra is fail fast, fail early. Mm-hmm. And I interpret that as like throw shit at a wall and see what sticks, and then, double down on that when it does. But I'd be interested to hear you elaborate on some of your bigger failures, if anything comes to mind.
Oh, boy.
Can I add a part B to that,
sure.
too? And I would love to hear about how you navigated them kind of on an emotional sense, because I think in snowboarding, we're all very deeply emotionally tied to our professional lives. And how do you find that balance or separation to be like, it's okay, I'm not going to beat myself up about this?
Yeah, so I really define both the progression of the company and my personal career by our oh shit moments. And, I think either where we feel like we've made a mistake or we're doing things that weren't really aligning with our values and where we want to go. So I can run through those if you want.
Yes.
The first oh shit moment was really in the early days realizing that the sport was going in a freestyle direction. And we were coming from that East Coast ski race mentality. And they were starting to build half pipes and stuff. And you know, we were really behind the curve there. I think with all these oh shit moments, we not only learn from them, but then we end up, you know, taking it the other way and becoming a leader the other way. So the first moment was really realizing we had missed the whole freestyle trend. Another was when we were in Europe, and I had a Swiss distributor who got a run of boards that were defective. And so this is like 1987. All the bindings pulled out. About 80% of his boards or something while people were riding.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That was a moment we became obsessive about quality. We were like, this is never, ever going to happen again. And I think because you're a leader and you're a pioneer, the market forgives you pretty quickly. But we were like, we will never, you know, quality became our obsession after that. I think the third oh shit moment was we were heading in the wrong direction. Again, we had made a decision we wanted to continue to grow. And we had a leader at the time who said, let's go into board sports. We'll become a surf, skate, snow company. Thinking that we could bring our technology and R&D to those industries and gain legitimacy. We also, as you know, purchased some snowboard brands, Forum, Foursquare, and we said we can bring them along technologically, but produce them cheaper or whatever. It was the wrong move. It was just the wrong move. We didn't bring any legitimacy to those brands, and we couldn't really help them from a technological point of view. And what was interesting at the time was we're messing around over here. I mean, I think at one point we had 16 brands. Wow. 16 brands. And we're messing around over here trying to keep these from breaking even or whatever. And the Burton lifestyle product was growing. Like all of a sudden, we never thought people would want to wear Burton off the mountain. Right? We were committed to making stuff for the mountain. All of a sudden, our hoodies and our T-shirts and our baseball caps, they're growing, especially in Europe and in Canada, where we're really two of the places they were growing. And so we're like, hey, we've got to focus on the mothership. So we did what I called Project Focus, and we divested of ourselves of all those brands. And we kept Anon, you know, Anon was always our brand. And Jake always just thought nobody wanted to be head to toe Burton, you know, so we named the goggles something else. But obviously we kept Anon and we focused on Burton. And, you know, again, a mistake, painful. Awful, cost us some credibility, but we corrected. Another big oh shit moment for me was with women. You know, we always saw ourselves as being a really inclusive community. And I'll never forget, I think it was 2001, Jake and I were in a meeting of all our global directors from around the world, 25 people, 2 women in the room. And it was actually Jake who turned to me and said, this does not bode well for our future. I think he knew at a gut entrepreneurial level that you had to have diversity in order to be sustainable long term. And again, being privately held, we can be thinking longer term. We can correct those mistakes by investing now in our women's leadership, you know. And then another big oh shit moment was with sustainability. We were always like, hey, fuck, we make, a product that requires chemicals that come from fossil fuels. We can't be seen as greenwashing or whatever. And we never really had our own auditing program. We were just like, oh, we're in the same factory as those brands like Patagonia and North Face, so we're okay, And I guess it was about 2002, 3 that I just really all of a sudden had a wake-up call and said, oh, man, we got to get on top of this. This is real. Climate change is real. I think our industry didn't want to talk about it. They literally didn't want to talk about it. And so, again, we went from being behind the curve to being a leader. I mean, we're the only hard goods company in the world, any kind of hard goods, skiing or snowboarding, that's B certified now. And then lastly was more recently with the George Floyd murder, kind of realizing, oh shit, we have not done enough to make people of color and the LGBTQ community feel part of. Again, I think as a community, we think of ourselves as so inclusive and inviting. But I think with some of these marginalized groups, including women, you've got to be proactive. You've got to find ways of breaking down the barriers. And so for the long-term sustainability of the company, we've got to have diversity. So I think these oh shit moments where we realize we're not living up to our values or we're not doing enough or we've made a mistake. But then we were really good at turning them around, again, because we're privately held and we can move quickly.
All of that stuff, it's great to hear about that because I think it really is impactful to, I love what you said, define how you're doing by the oh shit moments. And I wrote that down. I'm like, going to take that one with me. But I think that kind of stuff is really scary. But everyone you're listing off, you're like, oh, and we learned this, we learned that. I had a question about the bringing in more women, like you're saying, from that meeting of your global directors. And I remember in the early 2000s hearing that you'd implemented a women's initiative in your staff. And that was one of the first times I'd ever heard of that kind of thing. And I think that was, to my knowledge, very ahead of the curve. Can you talk a little bit about that specifically and what that entailed? Because that is very powerful in setting a pace in the industry, I think.
Yeah, again, Jake turned to me and said, this is not going to bode well for our future as a company. Can you do something? And, once again, I think my personal philosophy is, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. I'll figure out how to do it. And so we really looked at how do we recruit more women, how do we retain the women that we have, and how do we promote more women into leadership. And it took years, you put your head down and you work. And, we figured out how to recruit more women. And, there was a backlash a little bit. People are like, oh, you're going to put in quotas. And, and it's like, no, we're fucking not going to put in quotas. But every time we have a leadership position, you're going to make sure you have a woman as a finalist. And it's really easy to take resumes and, get all these resumes from guys. You got to go out and find a woman who's equally qualified. And how do we retain them? And a lot of that had to do with maternity and post-maternity and being more progressive on that. And, really, and then giving people advancement and development opportunities. We did things like we have, I realized if a woman is in a high-powered job in marketing, sales, or product, they have to travel for their job, right? So we have a policy where for the first 18 months of your child's life, and you have to travel for your job, you can take a caretaker with you, or we will pay for a caretaker at home. Eliminate that barrier. The other big thing was mentoring. Women really craved mentoring because, I think if you're in a room full of guys, that kind of happens naturally. You're like, hey, let's go get a beer, let's go play golf, let's take some runs together. So we had to be more proactive. with women. And there was a backlash from the guys, like I said, but then all of a sudden they realize, oh my God, I'm getting these benefits. We're getting childcare subsidies. I'm getting paternity leave, and I remember at one point they came and said, hey, we want to be part of the mentoring program. So now it's very much co-ed and global. And, if you'd ever asked me, would Burton have become a mentoring culture? I would have said no way. But because of the Women's Leadership Initiative, we did. So then men really started to see the value. So we went from under 10% of our leadership being women to over 40. The senior team is 50-50. And women in very non-traditional roles. I always like to say, our HR and our foundation are run by men, and our chief commercial officer is a woman, So I think it's made it a stronger, better company.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you hear about it from the rider level on up. It's like getting diversity within staff increases the quality of the product, the quality of the user experience, the rider experience, the ads, everything across the board.
You have to have women in decision-making roles to reach that women's market. And that was one of the advantages I had with the company. I could say, guys, look, we do a good job with this. We're going to do better at the women's market. We're all going to be happier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I thought was interesting, too, talking to Kimmy, which seems obvious and like rudimentary, really thinking back, but she was one of the first women, from what I understand, to have pregnancy written into her contract for snowboarding.
First, I think, professional athlete.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this was a huge
Of
moment.
Any sport.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, I was CEO at the time. I was the decision maker. I'm a woman. I know what it's like. Yeah. I mean, I remember when Kimmy called me, and we're really close friends, and she was kind of mumbling. I'm like, what is she's trying to tell me something? What is she trying to tell me? And I was like, oh my God, you're pregnant. That's great. And she said, yeah, but my contract's up in 2 months. And I said, we're not going to change your contract. And it was at the same time, Alyssa Montero, I guess it was, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times saying, Nike tells you to just do it until you get pregnant, and criticizing Nike for not having a policy. So I really credit Kimmy, again, being able to come to me like, hey, what are we going to do here? And my first instinct was, of course we're going to support you, I don't know if that would have happened with a male CEO. I don't know. I'd like to think so, but I don't know.
I think in those things, and I'm not a parent, but I know, the ramifications of having to take time off, whether you're an athlete or even behind the scenes in the industry, when you're pregnant and you can't go on hill, and it can be a very scary concept, and it can put everything that you've worked for decades in jeopardy, or feel like it is. And so even to come out for her to say that and be able to approach that topic, I feel like created such a tidal wave of change.
Yeah, it really did. I mean, again, we were leaders in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how you guys handled it.
Yeah, and I credit her too.
Well, this may be a little bit out of chronological order for what we're going into, but, who gives a shit? We're having a free-form conversation. So we have a guest question from the legend, none other than Kimmy Fasani. Here we go.
Hi, Donna, and the whole Bomb Hole crew. This is Kimmy Fasani. I'm really excited for this episode, and Donna, I'm so excited to be asking you a question. As you know, you've been an incredible mentor, supporter, advocate, and role model. You've helped me navigate so many of life's challenges, injuries, motherhood, and last year at my last chemo treatment, you showed up and took my family and I on a surprise trip to Baldface Lodge. Getting back on my snowboard was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. It was invigorating and energizing and so uplifting. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences in navigating challenges with Jake and how healing getting back on your snowboard was? You shared this with me up at Baldface, but I feel like it would be really helpful and uplifting for the rest of us to hear. Thank you for everything that you do. Snowboarding is so lucky to have you as a supporter. and the community that you've helped build. Have a great rest of your interview.
Love her. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing more healing than snowboarding. I mean, I think I was probably talking to Kimmy about after Jake's death. I think I rode every day that I could. I was riding 5-6 days a week because that's the place where you go to feel whole and to feel freedom and to feel his spirit and to be in the moment. So, snowboarding is more than an activity. It's spiritual. Incredible.
Wise words. Now, can you elaborate on that story of, I know you guys were both a part of this. I'd love to hear you guys talk about this, of Kimmy going to bald face.
Oh, I love this story.
Yeah, because you were at the party I had to put together. Actually, it was her husband Chris's idea. I give him I give him the credit. So I was in California, Encinitas, where one of my kids lives. And he called me and he said, I know you're going to Baldface. We've always had a tradition of taking all the Olympians backcountry snowboarding after the Olympics to remind them of what snowboarding is really all about. And so we had lined up to take all the Olympians, that were on Burton from all over the world up to Baldface. And Chris called and said, what about taking Kimmy? And I was like, yeah, if she's healthy enough. She had just done her last chemo treatment, and she was in Encinitas where she was getting the treatment. Chris and the kids were up in Mammoth. So he said, you're going to have to keep Kimmy in Encinitas for a couple days. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? And he's like, tell her you need to talk business on Friday. I'm like, she will never believe that, right? So I actually called Mary and Shannon Dunn, and I said, let's say we're having a party for Kimmy to celebrate the end of her chemo, and then I want to do a spa day with her the next day, and then I'll fly her back to Mammoth. And luckily, Kimmy was like, hell yeah. Yeah, I'll celebrate.
Yeah, and also to butt in, she had no idea. What she thought was that she thought that Chris was going to surprise her with a Hawaiian vacation.
Yeah.
So she literally, I went over to her house. This is a couple days before that, and we were hanging out. And she's like, I just went and got like a couple new bathing suits to kind of, to go on this trip, because she was going through so many like physical changes from the chemo. So she was like, that was a big thing just to do that, and she was like, I don't know where he's taking me. He won't tell me, but I'm pretty sure it's Hawaii. So she had no idea.
Yeah. So I said, hey, listen, I can give you, we can fly back to Mammoth together. And she still had no idea. And we're on the plane. I'm like, so are you really riding a lot? Like, I started to worry, like, does she really have the strength? And she really did. So then we landed in Mammoth, and Chris and the kids and Chris's mom were all there. And they're like, we're going to Baldface. And it's funny because, a champion, a person like Kimmy doesn't like to be out of control, right? She's like, oh, my God. But yeah, so we surprised her and took her up to Baldface with everybody. It was amazing. And Baldface made an exception and let her kids come.
It was so cool. And I think what was really cool for me, because I didn't know about the like, when you told me about the surprise part, honestly, the excitement and the joy in your voice and sharing that, I think, again, was just like a testament to the relationship that you have with Kimmy and with the riders, and that you and Jake fostered. Because that's an incredible thing to be able to give to someone, and for her to feel so whole through that experience.
Yeah, what a thing she's had to go through. Yeah, incredible. So she's a role model and inspiration for me too. Works both ways.
You guys are some legendary humans. I love to hear it. So going back, another thing just in regards to some of the women's topic here too is you guys were revolutionary in women's products, especially the landscape was obviously male dominated for snowboards still in a lot of senses is. And I would love to hear you guys kind of talk about evolving women's products.
Yeah. So, the other way that we were really always a leader was in equal prize money and pay. for women. I mean, I remember it was, I don't know, like 1987 U.S. Open. The first women were competing. And I remember saying to Jake, what are we going to do about the women's prize money? And he said, well, why wouldn't we just pay them the same? So, I mean, I think snowboarding is so unique in that it's the same course. They're riding the same stuff, and they're getting equal pay, and they're getting equal prize money, which I think is great. And I think, you know, there was a sense, I mean, it's interesting. I remember when we really started to develop women's product, I went to some of the team riders, and I'm like, look, we're starting to develop women's product, but you're wearing AK extra large, you know, baggy shit. And they really said, you know, to play with the big boys, we got to look like the big boys. There was kind of this pressure not to stand out and not to have different product. And I think this generation has very much changed. You know, it's changed over time that I think women now feel comfortable expressing themselves differently than men and being authentic about it. But, you know, it was the same idea. We're going to use the women to develop product. And then you start diving into things like, you know, I'll never forget Shannon Dunn telling me she was too intimidated to go into a core shop. And I thought, oh my God, here's a bronze medalist snowboarder who's too intimidated to go into a core shop. So we have a whole ecosystem. So we have to start working with the retailers. We have to start working with the mountains, you know, instruction, you know, getting more female instructors. I mean, it's an ecosystem that you've got to work on. It's not just product. But and I think there was something a little broken in the beginning with the women's feedback. We were pinking and shrinking. I'll admit it. You know, we were taking a men's style and making it a little smaller and making it a different color and saying, here, don't you like it? And so again, it had to do with hiring more women who were going to be making decisions in product, both creative and product development, and splitting them out, saying, look, this is women's development, this is men's development, and they are going to be separate, and you're going to be listening to the women on this side and listening to the men on that side.
Mm. And you would host the women's and Jake would host the men's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, super interesting.
And kind of bringing that around full circle, I think, to touch on the family tree a little bit, because that's a genderless product, but there are boards.
I know. I'm like, you can't fucking win.
No,
now everybody wants unisex or whatever, you know?
We're very cyclical. But I think that is still, the ethos of that is still ingrained because, for me, like I'm 5'2", you know, that a lot of times traditionally there weren't a lot of those really cool shaped boards or really interesting things. You couldn't ride them if you were on either end of like kind of the size spectrum.
Right.
And so now you do have this line has grown. I feel like it's, I mean, from a consumer standpoint, I don't know, but I feel like it's incredibly popular.
Yes.
You know, and it has that
and
group
you
of
know
boards
what?
like
I
that.
shouldn't, you know, it really is designed as unisex. And, you know, same with like our analog line, that's a unisex line. You know, it's not just men's and say, here, take a smaller size. It is developed specifically as unisex.
Yeah. And that's, I feel like, very powerful in the industry for product right now too. It gives a lot more choice, but it seems like even when you're creating that, you're still really considering, I would imagine,
Yes.
women and men and everything going into that.
Totally.
Yeah.
I hear it when we don't have, you know, sizes small enough on the boards. Why are you starting at 155 or whatever? I hear it.
You know, this is an interesting topic too in regards to this because we just recently talked about some product on one of our shows, Group Chat, and it came up. Maggie Leon was mentioning that she was really into the Burton Love series back in the day, and she had it all over her wall. And then she was saying, you know, like you guys had all kinds of protesters, and you had to go out in front of the protesters and essentially like stick up for Burton and things like that. And I'd love to hear your side of the story since we just freshly talked about that.
Yeah. Oh my God, the love controversy. That was kind of a painful experience because, I mean, first of all, you've got to understand the context. It was October of 2008. The entire global economy is melting down, right? banks are going under, right? We don't know, what does that mean for, is our fucking bank going to go under? Are we going to have to lay people off? And they care about what? This board? Like, are you kidding me? So, again, by that time we did have women making decisions about product and stuff. So we did have a process for, if the men were doing a product, women would see it, make sure it wasn't considered misogynistic, right? That was really important to us. And they did this collab with Playboy. And when I first heard, I thought, no fucking way, right? And then I saw the boards. The models are from the 60s. They're well fed. You can't see anything. They're not really, it was kind of kitschy and funny, which is something, true pornography is not funny or ironic, right? And so I said, you know what, these are fine, but put them in a black bag so that a mom shopping for a board for their 8-year-old son doesn't have to look at these, right? So we put them in black bags. And it was in Vermont that this just kind of protest started to build. And we didn't really respond to it because the people who were complaining were not our customers, right? Like, if you had been bitching about something, we would have responded, right? Like, our customer doesn't like this or whatever. But these are middle-aged women who are never going to snowboard. And we're like, fuck it, we just put out a statement. And it grew and it grew. It was nuts. It was in the press. They started to go to organizations that I worked with, women's organizations that I work with, and say, you can't have her. Like, I was supposed to speak in front of the Vermont Women's Business Group, and they were picketing. And I'm like, okay, this is nuts. And I finally spoke out. I finally got up and said, look, these boards are not offensive. They have a sense of humor. This is not misogynistic, and this is crazy. And as soon as Jake and I, we did a bunch of interviews, as soon as we spoke out, it kind of all died down. So one of the big things we learned was you can't just ignore something like that. It starts to build its own crazy momentum, right? Mm-hmm. But, I don't know. Jake always said, hey, when you're pushing up, against the line, every once in a while, you're going to cross over and say, oh, we shouldn't have gone that far. But I didn't feel that way with those words. Actually, I wrote it all year. And I used to love to see the 14-year-old boy's face looking at the board, looking at me, looking at the board, looking at me like, this woman is riding that board. So I named her and I wrote her.
What was her name?
Leslie, because that was the woman who was giving us the most. Shout out to Leslie. That's gangster. So, on the lines of products too, I'm super fascinated with your guys's products. You've done so many collaborations and capsules and things like that. Like, what is your favorite product or board series that you've worked on over the years with Burton?
Oh, that's tough. There have been so many great ones. I think probably my favorite over the years was the Rise snowboard when Kelly Clark retired, and we wanted to do a special board. And it was the first time I had a rider say, I want to design it with you. And I was like, wow, that's fucking cool. Like you said, you find, oh my God, Kelly Clark wants to do a board with me. And so my goal with the board was to make it the most sustainable board that we had ever done, using materials and glues and stuff that we, had been using on a small scale. And then she got to design the shape, and together we picked the graphics. So that was really special, and it's a great board. Shout out to Kelly and the Rise.
Perfect. Well, good timing. We happen to have a guest question from Kelly Clark. So here we go.
Hey, Donna, it's Kelly. They had asked me to do a guest call-in question. for you. And my question would be, Burton is known for being innovative and one of the most recognizable snowboarding brands on the planet. There's a lot of attributes that people really can identify with the brand. But what would you say is the thing that you're most proud of at the company that doesn't get talked about a lot, or the thing that maybe you had the most fun building? When looking back, you can say, yeah, this is actually something that is near and dear to my heart, that's incredible, that really doesn't get talked about.
Yeah, the Rise board. Yeah, she's such a product head. No, I mean, I would say under my leadership, starting when I was president and then CEO, so, 10 years ago or so, I really saw an opportunity to pivot the company from being product-led to being purpose-led. And I really felt like consumers wanted to see behind the scenes, behind the brand. What are your values, and prove it to me, right? And we had so many incredible stories from our sustainability. I mean, I like to say we're better than Patagonia on that shit, and don't get the recognition for that. Our women's story, whether it's, internally or externally. Our Chill Foundation, the way we give back to snowboarding, the investment we make into the sport and how we care about the sport. And so I was really like that. Those are the stories. I mean, yes, we need to continue to make the best product and quality and innovate. Innovation is very important. But let's tell our story holistically, and let's give people a peek behind the curtain, because what's behind there is really substantial, right? So I see that as probably my greatest contribution to the company, is pivoting to that purpose-led, and we define it as people, planet, and sport. What are we doing for our people, including the customer? What are we doing for the planet? And what are we doing to protect the future of this sport? Yeah.
Dude, that's so cool. And I'll say this, even just to kind of validate what you said, I'm actually learning that about Burton by doing the interview with you, which is cool. I'm not gonna say I was a Burton hater. I'm not gonna use those words. I felt like an outsider. Like I was outside the world. So, wow, really, really powerful.
Now you're
stuff.
part of the Burton family, Chris.
Yeah, now I'm in.
Now you're in.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll get the fall bash invite. You never know.
Yeah, I got a +1.
Oh, you got a +1.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
There is one thing we do have to talk about, and that's the Boston Celtics. So I think it's really fun to talk about. I'm from Massachusetts. You're East Coaster. Grew up. Had season tickets. My dad and my uncle. So every other game when I was a kid, Antoine Walker, Paul Pierce era. Really, really fun. But I'd love for you to talk about your love for the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned kind of with my roots that I was from Texas, and then my father got a job in New York, and part of his job was running Madison Square Garden. So he oversaw the Knicks and the Rangers when I was growing up. So we went every Tuesday and Saturday night to the Knicks, and every Sunday night to the Rangers. So I had this incredible love for, and then my dad would take me to Mets games, and we were football fans. I mean, we were just a sports family. I think that was one of the things Jake loved about me too, is that I was sort of as big a sports fanatic as he was. He loved any kind of competition or whatever. We'd be in New Zealand and he's going to the rugby game, so. Yeah, so I remember I had just married Jake. It was like 1983, I guess. And my dad said, hey, I'm getting together with some investors. We're going to invest in the Boston Celtics. Jake was like, no, I'm a Knick fan. You can't do that, right? Yeah, then you start going and you get to go to the locker room after the game. And all of a sudden, okay, I can do this, right? And that was like the Larry Bird days. They won a couple championships. And, my family sold it about 10 years later, but we stayed fans, right? And so we ended up getting, I think it's almost 30 years ago, we got season tickets and diehard fans. And what's really cool is when we don't go, we lottery it out to the employees. I think they would say it's probably one of the greatest perks. I actually remember when we announced to the company that we were going around the world for a year, we said, are there any questions? One question. Do we still get Celtic tickets? We're like, really? That's it?
Only the important stuff.
That's it? That's your only question? Yeah, so it's always been a love of ours, and we've always been rooting for the team through thick and thin, and I think I can tease it out. We've got a collaboration coming up with the Boston Celtics.
Wow, let's give that an air horn.
Yeah. So it's their 77th season, and 77 is an important number to us because that's the year Jake started the company. So they're going into their 77th season. We've been diehard fans, so we went to them and said, hey, can we do a collaboration with you? So they actually allowed us to use the parquet floor that the Celtics won the 2008 championship on. We literally sent a team down there to pick up the floor.
Wow.
And we built the boards at our facility, our Craig's facility in Vermont. We made 77 of them, and 13 of them are going to be randomly signed by a superstar.
Wow.
Can't give that away. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that.
That is cool. That's always incredible when two worlds collide like that.
Yeah.
There's going to be people going bonkers for
Yeah,
that.
that's so sick.
Fun. Yeah, that's cool that you guys get to do that.
Can we get you on a Burton just like for the Celtic board?
Yeah, maybe
Like,
we'll call it Capita. Maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll throw in the towel.
a little waiver.
Yeah,
we'll have to-
hometown
Just a little
exception. Exactly.
Just a little waiver.
That could be a clause in a contract. I can ride
This
one
could
board
actually
if
be
it is
kinda
a
like
collab
a-
It's
with the
got to be a
Celtics.
Celtic board. Yeah.
This sounds like a Craig Kelly Sims debacle is what we got going on here. Sounds like we're getting our hands in a whole situation here. Cool. Well, another thing, there's so much stuff to talk about, so I keep moving too, because things that get brought up a lot are Burton and its deep roots with the U.S. Open.
I'm excited. That's what
Yeah.
I've been
Tee
running in
it
the
up.
back
Go-
of my head.
Yeah, run it up from here.
Oh, man. Okay. So, the U.S. Open, obviously, for anyone that grew up on the East Coast, it was so formative, just in what snowboarding was, bringing all of the
man.
best riders to Vermont, and you could access them as an up-and-coming spectator, as a snowboarder. And then I would love to hear about just that kind of growing, kind of parallel and along with the company growing. And then, of course, we got to get into it going to Vail and, no longer being with us. So...
Yeah, I think it was really important to us from the beginning to showcase snowboarding in the best possible way, right? That's what I'm most proud of, I think, with the U.S. Open, is that we provided those riders with a venue to really showcase their skills. We won't talk about Olympic half pipes and how those have sucked and, not showcased. So anyway, that was always really important to us. And then again, there was an incredible vibe, right? It was almost like a festival. You'd go to Stratton and you'd have, it was almost like a Dead show or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And it grew and it grew and it kind of outgrew Stratton. And I give Stratton a lot of props for being the first major resort to allow snowboarding and their support of the Open. But they had really stopped supporting it. They kind of put us in the back of the mountain. They weren't marketing and whatever. And Vail kept coming to us. And I think Vail wanted to counter Aspen. Aspen had the X Games, right? So Vail was like, we need something comparable that's going to attract that younger visitor. And we always spent our winter vacation in Vail with our kids. We loved to ride that mountain and kind of felt like a second home to us. But it was probably 2 or 3 years. They kept coming and saying, we want this. And then they kept kind of upping the ante, like, we'll do this, we'll do this. And finally we were like, yeah, you know what? To really, it had outgrown. And also like getting the riders to Stratton globally was really tough. The logistics were tough. Hotels were tough.
Yeah.
That it really was. So it was great, and it was great at Vail. And, for me personally, the 2020 U.S. Open is something I'll never forget. After Jake died, and watching, for those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, it's in the Dear Rider movie, but at a break during the U.S. Open in 2020, you had hundreds of riders from over the last 40 years poach the pipe in his honor. And it was just one of the coolest things, Jake loved the poaching as much as anything else, that spirit of snowboarding. So then the pandemic hit. And I should also say, Jake and I spent the last year of his life, 2019, living in Switzerland. We really wanted to kind of go back. Our kids were all set. We really wanted to kind of go back to Europe for a year. So we were living in Switzerland, and we went to the Bang Slalom, Mikkel Bang's competition up in Norway. And it was like all ages, all abilities doing, a bank slalom. And it had that feeling. It had that feeling like Stratton did, where everybody's just having fun and a good time, and you have beginners, but then you have, oh my God, you have these amazing pros. And I remember Jake saying to me, this is the feeling that we want to capture, And so when the pandemic hit, we really had a chance to rethink, okay, what do we want to do for the sport, for an event? Do we keep the Open going? It's very expensive, you're never going to get enough sponsorship to cover all the costs. And Vail wasn't exactly pitching in anymore. I call him our anti-partner. Yeah. And so we said, we kind of looked at the overall landscape of snowboard competitions, and we said, we need more grassroots. We need more bang slaloms. And it had lost, first of all, it had stopped being a true Open, because a true Open is where anybody can show up and start competing on Monday in the qualifiers and end up in the finals against Shaun White by the end of the week, right? But when you can't do that at a place like Vail. It's too exclusive. It's too expensive. So one of the other things, for example, I heard in Europe when I was there in 2019 was the U.S. Open is no longer relevant to us because we can't get over there, because we've got to go for qualifiers and then back again. And that's just not realistic. So it had actually lost some of its global appeal. And I said during the pandemic, I said, we got to rethink this, and we had the time to do that. And so what we came up with is the Mystery Series. And, the whole idea is a more grassroots, accessible, all ages, fun weekend, and global. We can have it in Japan, China, all over Europe, and in the U.S. Will there ever come a time when we do a culminating event again? Maybe. I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out. But for right now, that's really our focus.
Yeah. I love that maybe. I like that, because I think the U.S. Open and the Open Series, they were so impactful on so many levels, and it also was during that and the TTR and the Global Open Series champion, and it was really a pretty incredible time in contest snowboarding in general, I think. And when you think kind of bridging to like, contest snowboarding, the landscape right now, the Olympics are obviously so much heavier in terms of the schedule and the sport. Where do you think we are right now? What are your opinions on where we're at?
I worry about it. Honestly, it's something that keeps me up at night because I think, the era that you're talking about was the era where we let the riders drive the sport, right? They showed us what they wanted. They were the ones who were progressing it and driving it forward. I really worry about that now. Is the half pipe irrelevant? Is a super pipe becoming more and more relevant? I remember I was in Finland not too long ago, and I was at this academy where, this snowboard academy where a lot of the big names from Finland have trained, and they have a very healthy snowboard academy. And they had an outdoor pipe and they had an indoor pipe. Not one kid was doing pipe. They all wanted to do slope style. It's more creative, it's more expressive, it's more individualistic or whatever. So I worry about what the future, and I don't know if you saw, like on the last US Open in 2020, we tried a different shape. Mm-hmm. Just to say, all right, what can we do here that's different? But I worry with too much fist control. I hate fucking fists.
Go on.
yeah, we'd love to hear more.
I'm bringing back the fuck fist stickers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know this. We never wanted snowboarding in the Olympics. I think what happened again, I think that the IOC was threatened by the X Games, right? So you're talking about mid-late 90s. And the IOC sees the popularity of the X Games, and no young people are watching pairs ice skating or whatever in the Olympics, but they're all tuned in to the X Games. So they never talked to us. They never talked to the World Snowboard Federation, which was alive and well. They never talked to any athletes. They just made a unilateral decision. Snowboarding is in the Olympics. And then they said, and you're going to wear this uniform, you're going to have this coach, you're going to have this sponsor, they're going to run it like the ski team. And everybody went, I don't think so. And the good riders boycotted. We sued USSA. It was the first time I remember us ever proactively suing somebody. And we sued them and said, you can't do this to this sport. You can't turn this into skiing where nobody knows their names. Snowboarding is all about creating heroes. I mean, what happens with skiing is they're all in Europe for the whole winter, right? So no American kid ever gets to see and relate to a skier. We want these riders to ride wherever the hell they want and become local heroes. And so, we did settle with them because it wasn't really us. It was the riders saying, we're not coming unless you make some of these changes, which they did. There are certain rules they have to follow to qualify for the Olympics, but then they don't have to have, matching uniforms and sponsors or whatever. But I worry that, you still see issues. I mean, I remember at the South Korean Olympics, right? I mean, the very first snowboarding Olympics in 1998 in Nagano, they canceled every single ski event because of a downpour, pouring rain. But they held the half pipe. So it looked like shit. The riders couldn't wear goggles. It was raining so hard. So you think, oh man, they made the sport look so bad. Well, not a lot has changed, right? In South Korea, there are really high winds, and they cancel the downhill for the, skiers, but they're going to let Anna Gasser fucking launch herself and almost die. She bailed because it was so unsafe. So there's still a double standard. They're still not understanding. So that's one of my last mission in life, I think. And about a year ago, I made the decision to hire someone at a director level that's sports advocacy. and whose only job is going to be they're looking at how do we increase participation, but how do we make sure that the riders, that the athletes are the ones who are deciding what this sport looks like 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, and not a bunch of suits in Zurich.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Respect.
I think that's amazing, and that's exciting to hear because it is a really fraught topic, and it's complex, and the IOC is not a small entity to need to figure things out with by any means, and this all meshes in.
And they're corrupt.
Yeah. It's you see it with locations and rider schedules.
Yeah, the head of FIS said we like dictators. They don't give us any trouble. There are no environmental protesting. Literally, he said it. We love dictators.
And it's so hard because it's like...
I wrote a letter. There's a new... He died, thank God. But the last president of FIS was like, we like dictators and we like to do it, and climate change is a hoax.
I remember that one.
Women
That was
shouldn't
crazy.
be competing on the same level as men because of their reproductive organs. He was fucking Trump with goggles, right? And I wrote a letter to every single association because the board of FIS can't hire and fire the president, which is strange. I find that strange. All the associations. So I wrote a letter to every association saying, how can we have this as a representative of our sport? I got fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you see there any roadmaps, or do you head where we're going?
Yeah, I decided to join the USSA board again. And because Jake and I, that was one of the things we said, either put us on your board or we're going to sue you again. So they said, welcome to the board. It's our foundation board. So I called them up again and I said, look, we've got to make some changes. And I'm worried about the legacy of the sport under your leadership. And I said, can I bring a wife? And they were like, what? I said, I wanted Kelly Clark to join with me.
That's awesome.
So, and Ross Powers was already on it. So I think out of 88, there are now 5 snowboarders.
Wow.
Solid ratio.
Yeah. That's probably a heck of a boardroom meeting to sit in on.
But so I think the idea is to both make internal changes, but then really work. What we're focusing on is really working with every single country. There are some countries that do it right. I think Canada invests in a lot of good things or whatever. And so we'd really like to, so what this sports advocacy position at Burton is working on is sort of looking country by country what's going on, and then sitting down with FIS and saying, look, these are the changes that have to be made at the Olympic level and then at each country level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
And you got to follow the fucking money. I'll give you a really good example. In France, the way that the association is set up is that there's a French ski school that has the monopoly, the École Française du Ski, has the monopoly on teaching snowboarding. And they give a big part of the federation's money comes from them. They have 3 board seats. Now, guess what? In France, you cannot become a certified snowboard instructor unless you first become a certified ski instructor. So they actually rejected a woman who was in the natural selection.
Wow.
And said, you can't teach snowboarding because you didn't pass this. And so you go, why is this? And you're like, oh, wait, they're getting all this money from the ski school. So anyway, there's a lot of work to be done. But I'm really passionate about it because I think, that's what I care about most is the sustainability of this sport in the long run.
Yeah. That's heartening to hear about that.
It's like
It's
really,
disheartening.
Yeah, disheartening to hear. It's
But
satisfying,
heartening that we're on it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got to be the riders who drive it, the athletes who drive it that make the decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely interesting when you look at competitive snowboarding, and it's like on the local level, it's healthy and well, and even like I'd say the X Games and things like that, kind of healthy and well represented. Snowboarding's represented well, and things like that. But it's like as you get to the Olympics, which is supposedly in mainstream culture, like the pinnacle of our sport, it's represented fucking horribly. So hopefully we can make a change in that. But we do, speaking of Olympics and things like that, a huge part of the fabric of the brand has been Shaun White. And even just to back it up a little bit, I remember going to the US Opens as a kid. I went through pre-qualifiers all the way, made it up to semis one year. And it's like, I remember showing up being like a, 17-year-old kid and signing up on Monday. And then that same year, like seeing like around that time, I don't know if it was the exact year, but seeing Kazu and Shaun White battle it out when Kazu was a baby.
And he had qualified that year.
Kazu.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Kazu was a nobody from Japan at that point. He was a prodigy child, but unheard of.
Yeah.
And do you remember like there's this baby going huge battling Shaun in the pipe at the US Open? So I remember seeing Shaun as a kid and just standing on the deck of the half pipe and watching those guys battle. But I'd love to hear you talk about kind of what Shaun has done for the brand.
Shaun's talent is undeniable. Right. I mean, he really was a child prodigy. He really changed the sport. He was clearly the best. He clearly kind of opened up snowboarding to the mainstream, right? If anybody knew anything about snowboarding. On the other hand, I think he alienated the core because he wasn't part of the community. And this is an interesting question. I mean, I remember kind of talking to my kids about this. Like, if you're going to be that kind of champion, can you still be that nice guy? I mean, people talk about LeBron James or Tiger Woods. Like, can you be both? So I know Jake always really respected that champion mentality that he had. Another problem, I think, is at some point, when you're young and you get influenced by agents and so forth, and you're told, oh, you can have a platform as a rock star, or you can have a platform selling this. And it's like, no, people want to see you snowboard, So I think that they lose touch with their roots. I think Shaun's come back somewhat and realized how important the community itself is. I would say the experience with Shaun kind of changed our philosophy around athletes, and that it's really more important to us to have people whose values and goals align with ours and not just the best. We were really committed to sponsoring the best athletes, period, right? And clearly that was Shaun. And I think right now we're much more interested in sponsoring people who are great, obviously, but we're giving them other opportunities, like maybe they get aligned with sustainability, like Danny Davis is really aligned with our sustainability efforts. Mark Sollers is doing so much for our Chill Foundation or whatever. So there are other ways for them to contribute. Did I answer your question, or did I totally avoid it, or
you did it great and
step around it?
One thing that's cool to talk about too, thinking about, you talk about sponsoring the best, and like to me, I'm a huge Zoe fan, and I had the pleasure of riding with her at Mount
That's
Hood.
when you're lucky because you've got the best and somebody whose values and goals really align with ours.
Is that an air horn opportunity?
Yeah, huge air horn.
Totally.
What I said to her when we were at
Super
Hood,
horn.
Yes.
Super air horn. Okay, like, whoops. No, just kidding. That's not the super air horn. Hang on. We got it.
That was a little New Zealand chill.
Yeah, like it was one of those deals where I said to her, I said, Zoe, thanks for being the best, but also being fucking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like,
100%.
because it's really important, those people, you know, your Marks and your Zoes and
Totally.
that are
That's I
that.
feel so good about our team right
Yeah.
now. I mean, I would say they all embody our values and who we are and our purpose and amazing human beings.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and talk to you guys about Woodward. We got Woodward here in Park City. We brought the crew up there. We all did flips into the foam pit the other day. I did a flip in a scooter into the foam pit. It was really fun. And if you want, the thing I think is cool is if you want to learn how to do a backflip, for example, on a snowboard, you can do one on a rollerboard first before you take it to snow. So they're really focused on progression from whether you're a beginner just learning to link turns, and then you have small jumps, medium jumps, all the way up to jumps you can do 1080s on, you know? So they've really focused on progression, whether it's in snowboarding, skateboarding, BMX, mountain biking. They've kind of got most action sports covered over at Woodward, and they're just doing cool stuff. They support our podcast. They support a lot of cool things in snowboarding. So if you have a Woodward in your local area, be sure to check it out. And if you're here in Utah, definitely be sure to check out Woodward Park City. All right, Donna, it's time to get into some of the hard-hitting topics. This is probably the most hard-hitting of the show.
I feel nervous.
Have you tried a run-through-a-wall smelling salt before?
I have not.
Okay. All right. This may be a defining moment in your career. So
When do you do them?
I do them. You know where I do them a lot? Driving at night. I keep them in my truck. They wake you up. I do them. Sometimes I ride dirt bikes and I do them before at the.
I get one
Mary,
too.
Mary,
Okay,
yay.
let's do this
So
together.
you got one back there?
I got one back here.
All right, I'll
I'm
give
ready.
you a little tutorial. And
Okay.
so you just kind of pinch it. It'll break, and then just ease it up to your nose.
How close do you want to get?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good batch.
Oh.
That's a good batch. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's painful.
6 more hours.
Yeah,
Let's go.
we're good to go another 14 maybe. Yeah.
Yep.
Whew.
Jake had this period of time where he was into rape. You ever do
Oh,
that?
yeah. The
Oh,
tobacco
my
you put up your
God.
nose.
Yeah, totally.
I've done
Same
it, yeah.
thing.
Oh, it's
You know, I think at Burton, the productivity could be through the roof if you guys.
If I just pass this shit out.
Yeah, you maybe at the,
It's
you
like
know.
a micro
Except we're all
dosing
crying.
smelling salts thing. You know, like just a little
Amazing.
bit, not too intense.
All right, let's hit name that video part. This is the intro, by the way, not the song. All right, we're going to take a quick break and talk to you guys about the Ikon Pass because winter is right around the corner. Resorts are about to start opening. They got the Ikon Session Pass starting at only $319 adult. The Ikon Pass Session 2-day, 3-day, and 4-day pass options offer a range of affordable entry points for the over 50-plus Ikon Pass mountains. They also got the Ikon Base Pass with limited blackout days across most of the 50-plus mountains. And of course, they got the Ikon Pass. Only the Ikon Pass provides the most access to the most mountains with no blackout dates. That's every bit of good stuff possible. They got over 178,000 skiable acres across more than 50 destinations worldwide. The good stuff is almost here. Again, from only $319 adult. Stay ready with your @Ikon Pass to 50-plus destinations worldwide. All right, Donna, what's your confidence level 0 through 10 on Name That Video part?
-1.
-1. No hesitation.
This is snowboarding's hot seat right here.
Yeah,
like, for
this
sure.
is a lot of people. This is could be a defining moment here. All right, here we go. Let's see how you do.
Dear Rider.
It is. Congratulations. Let me find the applause. Congratulations. All right. You won yourself a bomb hole prize
Oh,
pack.
that was a nice softball. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't sure where to go with it, but we went with Dear Rider. Great segment there. You earned that. You earned that bomb hole prize pack. We got hats, stickers, water bottles, all kinds of fun stuff.
Some smelling salts in there,
There
too.
is some
All
smelling salts.
Take it
right.
home.
Thank you.
Yep. And then for part 2 and Name That Video part, this is for our listeners. If you guys know what video this is, comment on the photo.
Mary, mouth it to me.
I
Yeah.
hope I know.
Yeah, this again, you guys aren't in the hot seat, so you're good.
Can
if
I
you don't-
phone a friend? TK?
Yes. Oh, that's a good one.
Okay, here we go.
So I got a peep game laying in the cut.
All right, that one's for our listeners, Donna. So you don't need to
Yay.
know that one. But if you know what video part that is, comment on the photo of Donna on our Instagram. That's where we pick our winner. And you also have to say rider and video. It can't just be one or the other. So also a big fan of the guy who opens up this segment too. Just got to add that in there. And then thank you guys for playing Name That Video part. All right, Donna, I got a quote that I've heard many a times in this small snowboard industry, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this quote. It's kind of two quotes, but also I've heard where Burton goes, snowboarding goes, or as Burton goes, snowboarding goes, and I've also heard when Burton sneezes, we all get sick. What are your thoughts on those?
What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts?
Ooh,
that's a
question
good.
the questioner.
Oh, damn! You turned it around on me. What are my thoughts on that? Yeah, I mean, I do think you guys are the industry leading. You guys are forging the path in a lot of directions. So you guys set the tone in a lot of the way snowboarding's heading. So I think by defining what you support, there is some truth to that statement. And you guys support something, snowboarding does follow because you guys are the biggest brand in snowboarding by a landslide, right?
Yeah, good or bad, right?
Good or bad, yeah.
No, I would say that's the burden of being the pioneer and being a leader, is that you do have a responsibility. But I think we've always taken that I think we've always known that responsibility. And I don't think you can name another company out there that invests more in the sport, whether it's sponsoring riders, competitions, stoking out instructors, everything. Like I said, snowboarding is such an ecosystem. We don't just exist alone. It's, it's the brands, it's the shops, it's the ski areas, it's the instruction. So I don't know that you could name a company that's invested more, but, like anybody, we make mistakes and can lose credibility pretty quickly too.
Also, the other thing is as you get bigger, I'm sure it would be interesting to hear your perspective, is like the reality is, whether it's a person or a brand or whatever, when you get to you become a juggernaut, like you guys have a fucking target on your back a lot of times.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's normal, right? In any industry, hate the big man or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it kind of makes me crazy, like when people call us corporate, because you're like, dude, like I remember talking to this consumer, we were doing some consumer qualitative research, and this consumer's like, yeah, Burton's really big in corporate. I like Vans. And you're like, are you kidding me? Like, do you know who owns Vans? And how big it is? It's a perception. Right? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we've done things that we deserve the target. We might not have been responsive to the core community in a way that we should have, or respectful or whatever. So I think some of it was earned and some of it just comes with the territory. But I also think it's changing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't feel like I get that vibe too much anymore.
When you get home, like say like after work, or when you're just trying to be like, okay, I just want to chill or whatnot, and when you have those moments, of challenge or feeling like someone's calling you guys out or something like that, how do you deal with it on a personal level? When to kind of deal with you, the snowboarder inside, having that dedication and dealing with that stress.
Two things. Meditation saved my life, changed my life, I should say. So I'm a big meditator, and that kind of gets you grounded and keeps you grounded. And snowboarding. You go back out and say, this is why I'm doing this. And this is so incredible. The moments I have with friends or family or colleagues, I think it's important to get out there.
This could be a good time. Recently I was told that you've been on the journey of sobriety, and I would love to hear what led you down that path and how that's going.
Yeah, I was on that path for a long time. I first got sober in 2001. I thought I was going insane. I was like, I couldn't control my drinking, and I thought I must be fucking crazy. Like, sometimes it would be controlled, and sometimes it would be out of control. You're nodding.
Yep.
And luckily, I had a friend who had a lot of experience with alcoholism, and she came to Jake and I and said, this isn't going to get better. I went to treatment. I was sober 14 years. And then Jake started getting sick, and I started smoking weed. And I thought, oh, that's okay. That's different. Like, what do they call that? California sober?
Yep.
And it worked for a while, but losing Jake was like, nothing I've ever experienced. The grief was overwhelming. After Jake died, the pandemic hit. After the pandemic hit, both my parents died within a short time of each other. And I returned to an old coping skill. And I think because I had been smoking weed, I was like, oh, what's a drink? Doesn't get any better out there. When you get out there, I learned a lot. I learned that I hadn't grieved. I really hadn't gone through the process of grieving. And, partly it was my fault, but the other thing was the pandemic. And you got to put on hey, this is going to be okay, people. Like, it's funny. I had made John Lacey co-CEO with me in 2019, and I promoted him to sole CEO a month before the pandemic. So I basically had to kind of jump back in to the day-to-day and turn to old coping skills. And, it was my sons who had seen me mostly sober my life, and they came to me and said, you got to get help. And I took 3 months off, and it was incredible. I mean, I think I was really able to go through the grieving process. I shared the journey with the company, which is something I hadn't done before, and people were so appreciative that I could be that vulnerable or whatever. So yeah, I love being sober. It rocks. I forgot how great it is. And it's been over a year now.
Congrats. Thanks for sharing that, A. And B, one thing that I'm on a similar journey, and one thing that people reach out all the time, and they're like, hey, I'm thinking about I have a problem, or I think I have a problem, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to quit. Do you have any advice or a roadmap for anybody that's trying to embark on that journey of sobriety?
Yeah, I think talk to another alcoholic in recovery. And, I think once you start talking to another alcoholic in recovery, you're like, oh, wow, we might be really different, but our stories are really similar. Try AA, try the program. And I like to say most normal drinkers don't just try AA. So, it's hard because you don't want to prescribe anything for anybody, but more be there like, hey, when you're ready, I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
And I think it's interesting to me to watch, when I first got sober over 20 years ago, people didn't really talk about it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so now I'm hearing more and more people say, oh, I'm sober too, and talking about it publicly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. Mm-hmm. And that's why it was really important. I mean, I also disappeared for 3 months from the company, so I owed them some kind of explanation. Mm-hmm. But to be able to kind of share, hey, listen, I was on this journey. There was a perfect storm. I relapsed, and now I'm back on that journey again. Mm-hmm. Whether they are in sobriety, thinking about it, or just going through struggles. I think it was, and need to take care of your mental health, mm-hmm. right? Sometimes you need to step away and take care of your mental health. But I think people like you talking about it, people like me talking about it, riders talking about it, whatever, I think that's such a good sign.
Totally. I think if there's one thing, you don't, like you said, you don't want to prescribe anything. What I think about sometimes is like the thing that you might be able to prescribe to a friend is some advice on self-compassion, because I think that's like the ultimate devastator. You try to get clean, you start drinking again. You're like, I'm such a piece of shit. Why would I do this? And like the self-compassion is like a lot to learn in those journeys.
Well, the shame keeps you from getting help.
Yes, exactly.
And as you know, you get yourself into a world of fucking shame. Yeah, imagine me. I was sober all those years. Imagine how I was talking to myself. Like, you're such a fucking idiot. How could you find yourself in this situation again? So I think the key to recovery is self-compassion.
Totally. Wise words. Love it. Fun. It's fun to be able to have these conversations openly and candidly. It's cool how things have changed. It's like
totally
like, the older generations, like, no, you fucking don't fucking tell anybody that you like make sure you look polished. But it's like, no, we're like, chances are the person next to you is going through the same struggles you are.
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
it's like, might as well fucking talk about it.
Yeah.
And it's hard in snowboarding because there is such a nightlife party atmosphere, to this culture, and to have individuals like yourself standing up and saying, there's an alternative. It's okay. It's fine.
And we still have a lot of fucking fun.
Yeah, totally.
And you feel better the next morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you hang out with a bunch of like recovering people. They're usually the biggest maniacs. So you're having a damn good time.
Totally. They're like people you would have hung out with drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yep. And shout out to Silk. He's also on a sober journey as well back there. Our producer.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Let's give him an air horn back
Air
there.
horn.
Thank you. Killer. Well, we got a guest question from none other than Sparky, a.k.a. Mark McMorris. If I can find this damn thing. Hang on one second. Where is it? Right here. Okay, here we go.
Hi, Donna. Bombhole crew. Mark McMorris here with a guest question. Donna, how exactly did Jake pass his German language course final? I always found this really funny. Sending my love. All the best, guys. Ciao.
Oh, that's pretty funny. And, first I just want to say the amazing thing about snowboarding are the friendships. And I would have to say Mark was one of Jake's very closest friends. And there was a 40-year age gap. I mean, how fucking cool is that, right? I mean, they were true soulmates, and their age didn't matter. It's so cool. But yeah, so when when we were moving to Europe, we, like I said, the guy who was helping us build the boards, or who was building the boards, didn't speak any English. And I had 2 years of German in college. So Jake and I decided to go to the Middlebury Language School, which is an 8-week intensive course. It was kind of hell. But he's kind of trying to run this company in the U.S. at the same time doing this language school. So he realized, and this is so typical Jake, he realizes like the finals are coming up and he's not quite prepared, right? So he approaches other people in the class and they decide to do a skit about all the kids in the class, like the teacher's pet and the one who never gets it right, and then invite all the professors over for German beer. A+. I mean, that was Jake, right? He made everybody laugh. He made everybody have a good time, but it was always unconventional.
That's amazing.
That's so fun. I love that. Okay, I want to change gears and talk about something like really near and dear to your heart, and that would be the Chill Foundation. And I'd love to hear why you started it, what it's all about, what you guys got going on.
Yeah, so Jake and I knew that at some point after starting the company, we'd want to give back in a way. And we had time to think about it because everything was pledged to the bank, including our children and our dogs and our whatever. But we knew at a point we really wanted to give back, and we thought about different things. We thought about environmental causes or whatever. And then we said we really want to give back to kids. And a couple reasons. One was teenagers were the ones who put Burton on the map. in the beginning. They were the ones who took a risk. I mean, you got to remember, you got this thing in a box. You had to put it together. You had to take it to your local golf course or back hill. There was no instruction. There was no how-to manual. So it was really teenagers who took that risk on us, and so we wanted to give back. And then I think Jake would always say that he was the type of kid who was always in trouble and kind of would have fallen through the cracks if he hadn't had the family resources and education and support that he did. So I think he always felt an affinity for teenagers in trouble. But anyways, so we decided to start the Chill Foundation, and it really started as a Learn to Ride program in Burlington, Vermont. The whole idea was to work with agencies like the Boys and Girls Club, homeless shelters, youth foster, group rehabs, and say, hey, we want to take kids snowboarding who otherwise wouldn't be able to snowboard. And after a while, we realized, wow, this is more than a Learn to Ride program. This is really a positive youth development program. We're teaching kids skills that they are then using and applying to their lives. And so, like, every week you go has a theme. There's patience, perseverance, courage, pride, right? And all of a sudden we're like, fuck, this is a world-class youth development. And it started spreading. And we're now in 20 cities, in 9 countries. We serve about 3,000 kids a year, and they snowboard, surf, or stand up, paddle, and skateboard. And it's like 11 to 19. It costs them $0 to participate in the program, and it really changes lives. I mean, what's amazing to me is like you have kids in Salt Lake City or Denver or Burlington who haven't even conceived of themselves being in the mountain. These are inner city kids with challenges we can't even imagine. And to think that they're in a place like Salt Lake looking around at the mountains and never envisioning themselves there, and all of a sudden they get the opportunity, their whole lives open up as a result of that. So it's really incredible. I mean, the mission is to change lives through board sports. And more recently, we've kind of added and make the outdoor world a more equitable place where more people feel welcome.
And I can say from firsthand, too, last year we went up, we did an Oakley event, and Chill was a part of the Oakley event. And so we took some laps with these kids, and it's like what you're saying is I experienced it. The kids are fucking psyched.
Yeah.
Like, and they're just barely, they're not even really linking turns yet, but they might just go on following leaf, but they are gassed
and
up
they
on following leaf.
go for it.
Yeah.
One of my first jobs in the industry, I was the Burlington coordinator for Chill.
Oh, no way.
With Joe Rizzo. He was
Oh
on
my
the same
God,
crew.
I think I had totally forgotten that.
So long ago. But it was incredible. And we took kids to Bolton Valley, which is, a good 30 minutes, if that, from Burlington. And a lot of the kids that were with us, they had never been to any mountain in Vermont, and it was so close. And seeing, it was 8 weeks, right? Is that how long it is? So seeing the progression of them going from being totally scared of the idea of falling, hurting themselves, being embarrassed, any of those things that go along with that, and overcoming that, it really is incredible. I think if you can get young people in on the ground floor like that, you can make such a big difference in so many ways, not only their individuals, but also in snowboarding. But it was amazing.
What you're telling them is, look, you can take positive risks in your life, right? You can try something, fail, get up, learn, do it again. And that positive risk taking is such a big part of it.
Yes, yeah. And it's a real learning, I think, like you're saying, for the volunteers and the staff that work there as well. It's like, not to sound cheesy, but it's one of those situations where the kids teach you as much as you teach them.
Totally.
It's really wonderful. And I think seeing what Chill continues to be and has become, and the other organizations that have come up in recent years and are providing similar kind of opportunities, I mean, that's such a great thing for snowboarding.
And I'm excited because we're growing. We're expanding both geographically. We're setting up more programs in Europe. So like this year, we just started Switzerland and Germany. We already had Austria, Italy, Czech Republic. And there it's a real way to integrate local kids with recent immigrants,
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And then again, I think after the George Floyd murders, it was like, all right, what can we do to make this more of an equitable sport? And even though kids' lives were being changed, not a lot of kids were staying in the sports or making a career out of the sports. So in Jake's honor, we've started something we're calling Chill Evolution, which is we're going to start working with other companies to provide internships, mentorships, retail jobs, to have, and then more advanced training. Like we just took some kids to do photography,
That's
where
sick.
And so we're really expanding and growing,
That's fun.
which
And
is exciting.
I don't know if you've been briefed on the giveaway we got.
I might have heard a rumor that you're going to help us out. That's
yeah,
awesome.
So it's pretty exciting. We just found out this morning, so it's a little bit of a junk show as far as like the organization of this, but all of the details will be in the show notes of the YouTube, or the description of the YouTube, or the show notes of the podcast. It'll all be laid out there if you want to donate. But we have a 2013 Burton Nug from Jake's private collection. It's a 146. It's got a certificate of authenticity signed by TK, basically. So, which is really cool. All right, we got all the details ironed out for the giveaway of the Nug from Jake's personal collection. You basically donate directly to the Chill Foundation at chill.org, or we will have a link on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just click that link. We'll also have a link in the YouTube description, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'll have a link in the show notes to donate, or you can find a link on our website, bombhole.com, or our Instagram, and we will be announcing the winner November 6th on our Instagram, so be sure to donate to a great cause, the Chill Foundation, and support good people doing great things.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, Burton is not the only funder. We're actually a public charity, which means less than 33% of the funding actually comes from Burton. But what Burton does is we provide all the back end, right? So we provide the salaries, the administration, all that. So when people are giving to Chill, it's going directly to programming.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Yeah, that's actually that's a really good thing that you pointed out, because you never know with like nonprofits how it all breaks down.
But that's really the idea, is that, hey, Burton's covering the overhead, the back end, and so that every dollar we get outside of Burton is going directly to allow us to expand programming.
Cool. Mary, I got some topics, but you have any direction you want to take it?
Yeah, I have kind of I have a random fun question. So we were talking earlier about the Burton team and just the legacy of great riders that have obviously been a part and are still a part of the brand. But if you look back at, the past couple of decades of snowboarding, are there any riders that you're like, oh, I wish they had been on our team, but they were on some other team?
Oh, wow. Good question.
That is a good question, Mary.
Yeah.
I'm wondering that myself now.
Yeah, I would probably say Jamie Anderson.
That's a solid team answer.
Great answer. Killer. So, I mean, another big topic is super interesting with Burton is you guys are privately owned for 45 years. Would you ever sell Burton?
Never.
Never?
Never.
Woo! Quick answer, no pause.
Did you see the Bloomberg thing?
I didn't see it, no.
No.
Yeah, so Bloomberg, I don't know, this was like a year ago.
Oh, I did see that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So Bloomberg published this thing that said we were negotiating our sale.
Yeah.
And it even said, like, for how much and whatever. And it was so not true and so out of the blue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was fucked up.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
And there was rumors actually around that time that people were like, oh, Burton's getting ready to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing. I forgot about that.
And then it shows up in Bloomberg, which you think of as...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I remember John Lacey ran into my office like, oh my God, you're not selling, are you?
Oh my God. You're like, I got something to tell you.
Yeah, forgot to tell you. No, so like I had to address the employees to say, hey, this isn't true. And then we did a pretty good post where I said, not for sale.
I remember there was a distinctive finger in that
Yes,
post.
there was.
Oh,
Burton,
yeah.
not for sale. We even made stickers, Burton, not for sale. No, I mean, I think it's our biggest competitive advantage. I think it allows us to do things other companies can't do. I think it allows us to invest in things and not pull the plug on them because the economy is not doing well or the shareholders want a bigger dividend or whatever. When Jake passed, I went to my 3 kids and said, what do you want to do here? Because we could sell it to a partner and you could stay involved or whatever. And they were all very adamant that they don't necessarily want to run the business, but they want to keep it a family-held private company. So, when you create something like Burton, you're not thinking, well, what do I do when it becomes successful? Because you're not thinking that.
Yeah, good point.
So you're like, fuck, I don't want to sell it. I don't want to take it public. I don't want to burden my kids with it. Right?
Yeah.
So, but we've been planning for a long time to kind of keep those options open. So, and it's pretty cool that the kids do want to keep it going as a family-held private company.
And in recent years, your boys have taken different roles, and I know like Timmy's working with the Mind 77 collection really closely, right?
Yeah, he's working with them, and now he's gone back to fashion and design school.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And George has been really involved in our social justice work. He created something called Culture Shifters. I don't know if you guys know about that. That was one of the coolest things we ever did, and that really came from George, and he's really passionate about inviting more people of color into our sport and making them feel welcome. And Culture Shifters is an event he started where we brought people of color from all walks of life. Some of them are NFL players, DJs, artists, and bring them for a good time in Aspen for a few days. And the last one was amazing. It was hosted by Zeb Powell and Salema Masakala. Yeah,
both
and Salema.
amazing individuals.
Both. And so not only did we party and have a good time and snowboard, but we had some really real conversations about the barriers. I hate when I hear companies saying, oh, it's affordability issue. It's not just about money. It's a cultural issue, and it's things that we can do better. So, yeah, my oldest son has been really involved in that work.
Killer. And one thing you briefed over is the middle finger has been a constant in Burton's, imagery, iconic imagery, branding in some senses, and it can be often misconstrued. And, for maybe a good explanation of what the middle finger is all about would be cool.
I think it's a sign of love and community. I mean, I think it was, Jake used to say, one of the things he used to say was, don't get mad, get even. Like, I think he was very motivated when people said, that's never going to work. You can't fucking do that. Snowboarding's never going to last. It's a fad. That made us tell us no, and we're going to fucking show you, right? Yeah. And that flipping of the bird is kind of, hey, we're going to show you. Tell us no, tell you no, we can't do that. No, it'll never work. Fuck you. So it did just become kind of a Burton sign of love and community.
Well, that's important.
And that just fuck you, we're not going to take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm. And also, even just hearing that, like, it's the fabric at its core of skateboarding and snowboarding and surfing is like that's where we came from, is we were not accepted. People were like, you guys and you fucking punk kids, get off the curb, stop skating, go snowboarding, we don't give a shit about you. And it's like it has evolved into this Olympic thing with fucking coaches and iPads, but like at its core, that's what the fuck it is.
That's who we are.
Yeah, and that's a good reminder. So I actually just got inspired hearing you say that. So that's cool. I actually never heard it in context like that, but I'm sure you've gotten some nasty letters about the.
I ignore those.
Yeah.
I mean, they really don't get it. And you know what? We've done things a lot more controversial than that.
True.
Jake and I made a couple dump Trump boards.
Oh, wait, I think I remember seeing he was riding one. I think I remember seeing that. That's I'm a fan.
Yeah.
That's so good. You know what we have is some Patreon questions. I almost forgot. We had a Patreon that supports us, and they submit some questions. So I thought there are some interesting ones. This one in particular is good. Tucker Zink asks, Burton has been steadily becoming direct-to-consumer brand, offering exclusive Burton.com only product, opening storefronts, and even offering rentals online. What is your view of the local shop?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the retail landscape has changed. You know, I'm sure local shops never thought we would become a retailer, but we never thought shops would have their own house brands. I mean, it's like, you know, brands have become retailers and retailers have become brands, and that's just the way it is. I think what people don't really understand is when we go into a market like with a flagship store, we're making the pie bigger for everybody. It's not like we're just taking a bigger slice of the pie. I mean, retailers aren't able to show our brand in its depth. I mean, think about all the products we have and all the things that we do and all the stories we have to tell, right? We can do that better in a flagship store. And then the good retailers will benefit from that. So, and you can see that. You can see in an area where we go in and build a flagship hub that the dealers around us do better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Silk, let's hit another Patreon. We got one from Michael Edmondson. You got that
Yeah.
one?
What is the most important business lesson you learned from Jake or with Burton? And what's the best way / most creative way Jake's memory has been honored?
Yeah. I learned a lot from Jake about business and about life. And, you know, one of them was really don't worry about what other people are doing. And focus on getting even in the marketplace, right? He was also incredibly ethical, and we've always believed in paying our fair share. I always say Burton pays more taxes than Google, Apple, and GE put together because they pay none. But I think, you know, there are a lot of different ways we're honoring his legacy, but I think the best way is through the Mind 77 collection. And I'll kind of tell you how that started. So, you know, I mentioned that he really cheered me on in every role I had. And he had actually asked me to become CEO a couple years before. Typical female, right? Mary, I'm like, I'm not ready. I haven't, you know.
Totally.
I know. But he was always sort of pushing me, you know, in that direction. So I was CEO. And he came to me and he said, I have a complaint for the CEO. And I had kind of restructured our supply chain and how it interacted with creative. And he said, I can't get my shit made. Like, I have an idea, and he's like, I'm going to have 10 ideas. 8 are going to be completely whack, but 2 you're going to be really glad I had. And I can't get the stuff made. And I said, yeah, because when we're producing something, all of a sudden you throw 100 or 50 of these great ideas in, it just rocks thing. And then I said to myself, I go, dude, why don't you make whatever the fuck you want in small quantities? We've got Craig's in Burlington that can make any kind of hard good in small quantities. We've got an R&D facility in China that can do up to 100 jackets, soft goods, or whatever. And I was like, make whatever you want. He was like a little kid again. I mean, that's you just saw the pure love of product. I mean, the guy was amazing because he could be an entrepreneur, wear every hat, and then he could run a company. But he didn't like it. He liked being in the nitty-gritty of the product. And so he's like, really? And I'm like, really? And it was the coolest thing ever. So he could come up with any idea, whether it was a different design, a different fabric, whatever, and we would make it in small quantities. And it was hugely successful, and I just feel so lucky that he got to do that. It was almost like returning to his roots of that product in small quantities. And, he always had ideas ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So we have tried to, really keep that going.
Can I interject a question building off that?
Absolutely.
So, you talk about the things that you've learned from Jake, but I wanted to kind of take a step back in that when you've been coming up and to the role that you now have in snowboarding, there wasn't really an archetype for that, and especially as a woman. So who did you take inspiration for? Who mentored you, or where did you learn to do what you do now?
Yeah, there was definitely a lack of mentors and a lack of role models. But again, I think that the mission was always bigger than us. I've always taken real inspiration from the athletes. I think about people like Nicola Toast, who was like one of my first heroes or whatever, and, Kelly and Kimmy or whatever. And yeah, it was really much, hey, figure it out as you go, right? Like I remember one time, Jake, we were announcing kind of a change in the senior team, and he turned to me, and I'd been handling Europe for a long time, and he turned to me right before the meeting, and he goes, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm giving you Asia too."
It's a casual aside.
And I was like, "Ooh, okay." And I really had no experience in the Asian market. So what did I do? I went and spent time there. I think that's the most important thing. I think we became truly global and successful because Jake and I were living in Europe when we went into the European market. And I have a way of going down. Sure, I'll talk to the general manager, but I'll also talk to the warehouse guy, and I'll talk to the receptionist, and I get them to open up to me about what's really happening. So yeah, you just do it because you gotta.
This is an interesting topic too, about kind of like masculine and feminine leadership. I think is really interesting too, because a lot of times, masculine leadership I would associate sometimes with maybe a little bit more emotionless, a little bit more like get it done, maybe grit or something like that. But then with feminine, it seems very like humane, like relationship, kind, nurture those relationships. And it seems like your leadership style has just been massively beneficial for the brand as I'm like listening to you talk.
Yeah, Jake was always a partner, and in the last 6-7 years, super foghorn or whatever it is for John, for John Lacey.
It's a foghorn now.
I like it.
For John Lacey, I think we have been kind of yin and yang as partners in building the company, and we've had our best years ever under our leadership.
Mm-hmm. That's so cool. Amazing stuff. Fuck, I just forgot. I wanted to say this real quick. I have forgotten a lot of air horns in this because I am so deeply engaged in this conversation. So if somebody heard their name, they're like, I didn't get an air horn. It's because I'm locked in on what you're saying. So anyway, Mary, if you want to take it.
No, I had just one more question about that, and because I think you bring up a great point about the masculine qualities, feminine qualities, traditional leadership kind of things like that. But then there's also, you throw in the thing that it can be very challenging to come up as a female leader. And that's still something that affects, and I'm not trying to go, crazy hard into the gender thing, but that's a real thing that I'm sure you encountered as well. And just gaining acceptance in the industry and creating that.
Yeah, that and balancing it, because women still, no matter how enlightened we say we are, women are still primarily responsible for taking care of the kids and the household and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it gave me a lot of empathy for the women in my company who wanted to become leaders. I think, you know what I used to say about women's leadership? It was not a feel-good or even a do-good initiative. It was a fucking bottom-line initiative. Companies with diversity it's proven. They're better run, they're better governed, they're more profitable. And it makes sense, right? When you've got a diversity of opinions around the table, you're more likely to come up with the better solutions.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
100%. We could say that at the bomb hole, huh, Silk? We got Jules as our GM, and people ask me questions. I say, I don't know, man. I just work here. You guys got to ask Jules. She's like got all the answers. Yeah. 100%.
True boss right there.
Good balance, Cool. One other note I have down here is the 4 agreements. I heard you're a fan of the book. Sell me on the book.
Yeah, I am a fan of the book. It started kind of with my kids. Jake and I would read it or talk to them about it every Thanksgiving. And then I realized it could really be applied to business. And so when John Lacey and I became co-CEOs in 2018, I said, let's base our relationship off of this book. And in a nutshell, it's it's based on ancient Celtic wisdom, a way to live your life, kind of getting rid of those self-limiting beliefs to be freer. And the 4 agreements are: be impeccable with your word. And that means more than just kind of doing what you'll say you do, but understand the power that your words have. And I've learned that as a leader, and as an owner. I might say something flippant and people are like, oh shit, she wants us to do this or whatever. You got to be careful with your words because they can either create or destroy. So be impeccable with your words. The second one is don't take things personally. And I really love that one because chances are it's not about you. Chances are whatever's being projected on you is about that person. And I think especially in business, we have a tendency to take things personally. And that's actually one of the things I love working with John Lacey, because you can have the most difficult, intense conversations, and at the end it's like, it was business. It's fucking business. We're friends, The third one is don't make assumptions. Ask, right? I think we all as humans, we see, if you rolled your eyes, I would say, oh, fuck, he hated my answer, and maybe you're pissed at Silk there. I don't know, so.
Probably.
Oh, yeah.
Don't make assumptions and always do your best. You're nodding. Are you a fan?
Oh yeah, totally. I've read it, many a times.
Yeah,
and one other thing to add too, if anybody's interested, it's like a very very nice intro level book. It's
short,
not dense. It's short. You can read it in a day. You can read it, easy. So
how have I missed this and not read this book? I've never heard of this book today. I'm going to get it this afternoon.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, solid intro to anybody that's even if you haven't picked up a book in 10 years, you can pick this thing up and be like, damn, I'm reading. I'm doing it. This is good. I'm learning. I feel good. It's basic human nature.
The other book that had an incredible impact on me and thinking about the culture at Burton was Yvonne Chouinard's book, Let My People Go Surfing.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one either. What's that one?
It's old. I think it was probably one of the first books he wrote, but it was about kind of an economic downturn that they went through in the 80s and how much he realized culture was important and what he did to nurture the culture there. And that book had a big impact on me. Let My People Go Surfing.
Cool. Great actionable advice. I think that's cool. All right, we're running down the show notes here. I got to get into another one here with, China as an emerging market and what your guys' take on that is at Burton.
Yeah, China is definitely an emerging market. We've actually been there for a long time in a small scale. I remember going there a few years ago, and it reminds you of what was happening here in the 80s. People discovering snowboarding and discovering like-minded people. But it's all new there, right? Capitalism is new, and people owning ski resorts is new, and ski resorts are new. They've built 500 of them in 5 years or something. But their investment is quite incredible. So we've always had a presence there, been connected to the scene there. but realized a couple years ago that it was really going to start to explode, both because of the government's investment in the infrastructure and the middle class getting more disposable income, being able to do that. So we realized we needed a partner in China, not necessarily for the capital, but really kind of helping us, guiding us there. And we found what I like to say is a unicorn. Really, truly. We found a guy who started a company called Hill House, and they're Nike's distributor, they're Adidas's distributor. You know, he's huge and very wealthy guy, happens to live for snowboarding. I mean, he thinks of it as a spiritual experience, you know, and his kids and his family. I mean, he really does live to snowboard. So I think Burton's like our joint venture is like a rounding error in his balance sheet, but it's his passion. So, and fortunately, Jake got to build a relationship. We did the joint venture with him before Jake passed, so Jake really got to see it wasn't about the money. It was about building the sport, getting people to do it. You know, snowboarding knows no borders. It doesn't know fucking politics. And this guy wants to help us spread that in China. So we got super lucky there. But it is growing. You know, the numbers are just insane, right? When you think of the scale of things there. It's also predominantly snowboarders over skiers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's kind of exciting.
Oh, yeah. It's about 65%.
Wow.
Damn, that's a win.
Yeah.
All of Asia is a majority. You know, you didn't have that entrenched alpine skiing history, industry, whatever, over there.
Cool.
So it's a majority snowboarding.
That's
rad. Cool. Yeah.
Love that. And it almost seems like the entrenched alpine skiing is the root of like it's like it's kind of what makes skiing whack in some ways, right? Because like at its core, sometimes I look at, you know, skiing is almost in this like country club, tennis club, skiing bubble. If we're doing a Venn diagram with my hands here, and then you have, you know, snowboarding, skateboarding, surfing. And like somehow they both collide on the mountain, but they're two different worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's why you didn't see much innovation in skiing for a long time. You know, Jake and I used to call them suits with spreadsheets. They weren't out there doing their sport.
Right.
You know, you've seen some innovation now with freestyle skiing, but for a long time there was no innovation, and it was just run like a business, any other business, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Straight down the mountain.
Do you guys ever think about
And we learned from that. You know, we learned, hey, we got to stay in touch. We got to stay in love with the sport, and we got to do it.
Did anybody ever say, like, should we make skis at Burton?
No, but we put out an announcement once, and it was April Fool's. And we said, you know, we made this fancy announcement that we were going to start producing skis.
I remember that. I don't know what year it was, but the year you guys had an outerwear print that had skiers. It was like white with little green skiers. And that was pretty funny.
That's so cool. All right. So, you know, we're getting down to wire here, but one of the things that I really am curious about, you may have answered in some capacity, but I think you could probably elaborate on it. But, you know, losing Jake on a personal level as a husband and a father, and in addition to that, leading your company through hard times, through COVID, and just through, so like you said, you mentioned earlier too, losing your parents, and like just this tremendous amount of grief and pressure. And like, I'm just curious, like, how did you not fucking buckle, and what got you through it?
I just told you, I buckled.
Yeah, you did buckle. Yeah, true. Yeah, okay, good point. That's a good point.
But I think even the comeback from the buckle is still like, that's a lot in itself.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of it has to do with that Burton is more than a company, it's a family. I mean, every day I would feel the support from everybody who works there, from the senior management to the people in the retail shop. And you just feel lifted and carried by them. And yes, responsible, but it's a joy to be responsible to those people. So I think the fact that we're really a community, we're really a snowboard community, was tremendously helpful. My sons have all been amazing. I think something like that brings you all closer together. I was lucky I had one of them move in with me, who's very much like Jake, and like he's the cruise director. Let's go splitboarding. It's 5:30 a.m. Yay. So yeah, my kids have been amazing and have really been there for me.
Did you find with the timing of the release of Dear Rider, I mean, just as we were starting to be able to gather together again, from the pandemic and everything, and getting to celebrate him as a family with the greater collective family of snowboarding, how was that?
Yeah, you know what? I really think that was a good way to help us grieve, because you got to sit around and tell stories and hear stories about him. It's funny because it's not something I would have done, but he had started that film. I don't know if you knew that, but, Red Bull had come to him and said, hey, we want to make a movie of your life. And I had always told him he should write a book. And he was like, fuck yeah, movie, not book.
That sounds great. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. No, I'm not doing the book, but movie, yes. And so he had worked with the producer and the director for a while and kind of really given him the backstory. So, and he was really excited about it. And I remember right after Jake's service, Brian, the producer, came up to me and said, Ben Bryan was the producer. Ben came up to me. Yes, shout out, big shout out. Said, hey, what do we do? And I said, let's make a fucking movie. That's what he wanted, So I think that was in some ways hard because it was so fresh, but also healing. And that, you'd have his sisters tell their stories and friends tell their stories. And yeah.
That's cool.
And then, right as the pandemic restrictions started to lift, you could bring the snowboard community together.
Yeah.
It's somewhat cathartic, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you guys did a great job with that. It's fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, cool. I think it's a good time to get into hot takes. This is the rapid fire we talked about earlier.
How rapid?
I mean, it's like, it's choose your own adventure here.
Okay.
You can elaborate if you'd like.
Buzzer question.
Yeah. It's not, it's kind of semi-rapid fire, but
No,
if you got to
okay.
elaborate, you got space for that. It's long format.
Okay.
So, first question, hard-hitting question. And I always like to say it's almost like as it pertains to you. These questions are it's not like it. Some people like to look at it like data and spreadsheets and like, wow, this
That's not
guy's,
me.
Yeah, this is like how it pertains to you is how we like to take these. So, the GOAT of snowboarding acronym would be greatest of all time. In your opinion, both male and female, who you got?
Craig Kelly, Kelly Clark.
Woo!
That was good. The good linking there with the names.
Craig
just
Kelly,
coincidentally.
Kelly Clark. I mean, like I said, I don't think anybody would be filming, making a living filming if it wasn't for Craig and just his passion. And what can you say about Kelly, the winningest snowboarder of all time, male or female? And, the way she progressed women's snowboarding, nobody like her. And the way she gives back now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, amazing human.
Killer. Love that. Okay, would you consider snowboarding an art form or a sport?
Definitely both. And I don't know if you've ever read any books by Walter Isaacson. He writes about creative genius. Like he wrote about Steve Jobs, and he has one coming out about Elon Musk. But anyway, his whole concept is that true creative geniuses don't differentiate between art and science, like us normal mortal humans do. And that's how I see snowboarders as the really good snowboarders as creative geniuses. I mean, who would have looked at a picnic table and said, I'm going to slide that, or see the natural features or whatever and do that. So both, for sure.
Amazing. So next question, who do you believe is most underrated snowboarder in your eyes?
I'm going to say a category. I would say the adaptive snowboarders. I think that they're amazing and they don't get enough credit. Actually, the last trip Jake and I did together in 2019 was to that big dome in Holland. And we happened to be there when the Dutch adaptive team, and we got to meet Chris Voss and and his girlfriend Lisa, I can never say her last name, Schottenheim. Anyway, watching them and what they're doing and doing it with the physical limitations that they have, or Amy Purdy, or Mike Schultz, shout out. I would say as a group, they're under-recognized.
Love it. Love that answer. Next one, we do steel, as in rails, or powder.
What do you think?
I think rails. Personally.
Yeah,
Seem like
that's
powder.
it. That's
secret rail part dropping soon.
It's like,
powder.
A good backlip really gets me out of bed in the morning. Okay. Favorite or best style ever?
Jake. Especially through the trees.
Great answer.
Favorite method?
I have to say Ross Powers, 2002. It took our breath away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he shot out of a cannon on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite snowboard video ever made?
Well, plug for Dear Rider. That's a movie. I guess more recently for a video, One World.
That was a banger. Okay. Favorite board graphic ever?
The board graphic, and this is funny, I was thinking about it because it's a naked woman, but the one graphic I remember really sort of being, wow, to me was Nicola Toast's board, 2001. I don't know if you remember it. It was the edgiest fucking graphic, and it was very misty, had like a naked woman with a knife. It was really good. And that was like, I was like, wow, like, we are not doing fucking rainbows and butterflies. I loved that board.
Cool. Do you go pants over the high back or under the high back?
Over.
Oh, over. Respect. Okay. Dream heli trip. You take 3 people heliboarding. Anywhere, just good times, wiggle and pow. Who you taking?
Yeah, I've never been to Alaska.
Wow.
I know. So that's high on my bucket list, and it would be my 3 sons. Keep their girlfriends away for a while. No, I'm kidding.
Easy answer there. Dream sponsor.
Ben & Jerry's.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. That one came quickly. I feel like you thought about that.
We might be able to get that. We might be able to get an agent on that.
I feel like that would be a collab opportunity.
Yeah, there you go. Might have a 3-year DocuSign coming in the mail soon. All right, and then last one, worst trend. What do you got?
Worst trend in snowboarding?
Yep.
Jamie Salter.
Am I on video right now?
Incredible. Okay.
Are you going to explain that one to your listeners? Or
I mean, you're the one on. It's not my duty to explain. Would you like to explain? I
think we're looping back to being a privately owned company and the strength of snowboarders and snowboard brands now.
Yeah, I mean, Jamie Salter, he was the first person to take a snowboard company public. He took a ride public, and big fucking mistake for the industry. I mean, all those companies going public was a mistake, but then he's most recently, I think he turns brands into zombie brands. And he's just bought up a few more. Quicksilver, Roxy, Billabong. He already had Volcom. And, zombie brands. So, Jamie Salter, worst trend.
Wow. We've had people say things like that on air before and then had it taken out. So really cool to hear you say that.
Who took it out?
I'm not going to say for their own. That's their choice.
Oh, they went, oh shit, I can't be.
Yeah,
oh,
we had an shit moment with somebody.
No, I'll say it to his fucking face.
Amazing. Well, we forgot one section of the show. We forgot to do here is the pub beer crapshoot. So what you got to do is roll that dice on the table, and I will tell you what you do. Let me grab my little sheet here. And go ahead and roll that. And it's time to roll some dice for some cheap, fun beer presented by Pub Beer. No matter what you're doing, crack open a pub beer for some cheap fun. It's always a safe bet. Responsibly, of course. Now go ahead and roll that, and we will tell you what do we got? 4? We got, oh no, that's...
Lucky 7.
7. Who is one of your favorite people to party with?
Jake.
Obvious answer. Yep. Love that.
Danny Davis.
Danny Can we talk about his impersonations for a second?
Oh my God, how good is he at that?
Ridiculous.
Oh my God. You know, he impersonates people who like work for us and it will just have us like rolling on the ground.
He's like, my stomach when he gets going.
Totally.
When he hits that sweet spot where he's got like 2 or 3 drinks in him and he just and then he gets rolling, like your stomach hurts from laughing so hard. Yeah, his McMo impersonation hits.
That's amazing.
Yeah, his Sparky one is good. All right, we got a few more things left here. We always like to ask about our guests' snowboard setup. So what are you riding? How do you set it up? Tell us about it.
So I've always pretty much been a camber girl, and my favorite boards are the Talent Scout, Storyboard, step-on bindings. Now, I know there's mixed feelings about step-ons, but I think they were life-changing for me. You know, I'd love to tell you the story of step-on, how it happened.
Absolutely.
And, you know, Jake I think he was 59 years old at the time, and he was snowboarding with our head engineer. And he said, dude, I'm almost 60. I've been bending over for 40 fucking years. I don't want to do it anymore, but I want the same feel as my buckle bindings. We were 4.5 years in R&D, which is incredible. So I think for me, they've been life-changing, and I use them in all conditions.
Are you guys selling a bunch of those?
Yeah, a little bit. The demand's crazy.
Yeah.
Still growing.
I've heard that from just like, you know, friends and across different places saying that a lot of their parents have gotten back involved because they couldn't bend over anymore, and step-ons allowed them to take up snowboarding
Oh,
again.
you know, when we kept Kimmy on contract, she did it. She promoted them as pregnant. You can.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Smart.
Right. I mean, another mistake I think we made over the years was having a proprietary binding system, and everybody had their own fucking proprietary binding system, and it really confused the consumer and stuff. So we're really hoping that our step-on system, you know, we're licensing it out, not for a lot of money or whatever, make it affordable. So that the other companies, I mean, I don't think it's going to go all step-on, right? I think there's always going to be a market for strap bindings, but make it simple for the consumer. Keep it the same system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. And then stance and angles. How do you like to set up your board?
Yeah, when we started, it was like this.
Posy.
Yeah. And having kids, my boys would be like, okay, Mom, slowly I would be turning. So I think I'm like a 12, -3, -6.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty reference stance.
Cool. That's awesome. Amazing. So what's next for Donna Carpenter?
Oh, what's next for me? I think I mentioned really the focus on the future of the sport and what competition looks like, what does life under the FIS look like? How do we get the riders to drive it? I think for Jake's legacy, we've got to stay really focused on innovation and making sure we're committing enough resources to long-term innovation and not just tweaking the product that we have, but really thinking about what the rider's going to need. And then I think one of the things I wasn't doing right after Jake died that I'm committed to doing now is having more fun in my life. he was kind of the fun guy, and it was easy just to follow. Like, yeah, fuck, I'll follow you wherever you go, and I know it's going to be fun, So I think I'm really committed to doing like more snowboarding trips with my family and with my senior team, and just having some fucking fun.
Heck yeah, well said.
All right, one thing we always do before we get out of here too is thank yous. Do you want to throw out any thank yous?
Thank you, Chris. I think this was amazing. I think what you're doing for snowboarding is amazing. Having these real conversations, in-depth conversations. So thank you. Thank you, Mary. You made me feel so comfortable because we're like friends. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all you do for snowboarding. Incredible. You're going to be the guest soon.
This side is so nice, though, and then I just get to ask the questions. It seems mellower.
Safe.
Yeah, safer.
Cool. Mary, you want to throw another question up?
Yeah, so I think this is something that I'm sure a lot of people reach out to you and ask, but if you I was wondering if you could offer any advice for women and guys too, but women who are wanting to get into the industry side of things and how to find their path or break in. Or one thing is I hear from women who are like, I'm kind of getting there, but I keep hitting hurdles. So maybe they're on their early parts of their journey. But what kind of advice would you give for them to keep pursuing being a part of this industry?
Yeah, there's nothing that makes me happier. I was recently I was doing an interview for ESPN, and the camera woman, I said, wow, that's cool. It's a camera woman. She put the camera down and she said, I'm in this industry because of you, because I heard you speak 5 years ago somewhere. And I thought, oh my God, I can't think of anything more rewarding. I do have posted on our website my 13 career tips. Somebody can look up that I spent a lot of time thinking about. But when I think about my career and kind of what propelled it and what made it successful, was always thinking about what the company needed, right? Like I knew the strengths that I had. I knew what I could bring to the table, but you've got to match that with whatever organization you're working for. And the people that I've seen be really, like women at Burton that I've seen be really successful, or guys too, they've seen an opportunity, right? They say, I've got this strength and I see Burton has this opportunity. I'm going to align those two. So you can't do your kind of development goals in a vacuum. You can say, okay, I want to work for this organization. Where do they want to get and how could I help them get there? And I try to wake up every morning and say, all right, what am I doing to help this company progress? Not what am I getting out of it, right? I mean, I want to align what I'm good at, what I like to do, but really focusing on whatever company it is you want to work for, what they need. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, working toward the greater good is going to benefit yourself by giving that. For sure. That's great advice.
Yeah, and I always tell people when they have like a 5-year career plan, rip it up, throw it away, burn it. Fuck it. It's not going to do you any good because things change and the goal is to see opportunity.
Totally. Drop the expectations, increase the motivation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that.
That's so good. And, my girlfriend shared this quote with me this morning. She's like, it has some app or whatever, but I thought it kind of applies exactly to what you say. And she's just like, damn, this kind of hit me this morning. We said, givers advance the group, takers advance themselves and hold the group back.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like what I heard was like, be a giver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, within that, know what you like to do, what you're good at. I mean, I think for too long there was kind of a focus on, let's build up your weaknesses. No, fuck that. Just focus on your strengths, what you're good at, and how can you align that with where your organization's going or wants to go.
Yeah.
Damn.
And if anyone tries to, put a hurdle up, you got the middle finger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
No, really, you cannot. no, but that's really part of not taking things personally.
Yep.
The 4 agreements, right? Like you have zero control what somebody does or thinks about you or whatever. Why spend an ounce of energy thinking about it?
Yep.
Damn, you are Miyagi-ing us right now.
I love it.
On that note, I think it's been a hell of a show, Donna. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you coming and sharing your story. I feel inspired right now. I want to bottle this up and take it with me.
This was actually fun.
You said that like you didn't think it would be fun.
Even the salt thing, smelling
salt
salt thing, wasn't as bad as I thought it
They're
was
a
going to
great
be.
product, actually. Run through all smelling salts, bombhole.com. Pick them up. No, it's been fun, and you've been a pleasure to chat with. So thank you so much for everything you've done for snowboarding. I want to say that on behalf of snowboarding, like we are all in debt to you and the road you've paved for all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and I double up on that. Thank you for all of snowboarding, the women in snowboarding, and thank you both for having me in this discussion with you. It was so fun, and the stories and the wisdom that you shared today are so meaningful, and I hope that I'm going to walk away with a lot from it, just like you said. So hopefully everyone listening does too.
Cool.
Thank you.
Lastly, we got to throw a shout out to our boy Silk D with the
Yay,
mullet
Silk.
back there.
A pleasure.
Nice
It was an
work,
honor.
Silk.
This was a great episode.
Yeah, hair's looking phenomenal, by the way.
Thank you.
We got to get
Thank you.
Straight
maybe you
out of
could do
Proud of
a,
myself.
a product description of what you use to get it looking like that.
Do you guys have a
Just
hair
water.
like a hair gel sponsor? No, don't say that. Like wait till you get the sponsor and then
Yeah.
I mean, insert company here.
Cool. And then lastly, everybody that tunes in, listens, the snowboard community, it's a beautiful place to be. So we appreciate you guys, all the sponsors, everybody that listens, all of snowboarding. Thank you guys. Over and out from the bomb hole.